Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if God like Naruto kicked out of his family part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Wrath. Wrath has been seen as many things: an uncontrollable rage, a sin, and a feeling that many have lost themselves to, but that is not true. Wrath is a feeling that has been misunderstood. Wrath is something that is in everything. Many have been taught by elders to control their wrath and never let it out, but that is not always a good thing. Wrath is not something that unleashes itself for little things, it always requires a trigger. For some, that trigger may be seeing a loved one in danger, for others it may be protecting yourself to ensure your survival, but the rare few have a trigger that is activated by the mistreatment they receive from those around them. A young boy, very young, is going to be among the latter because of an event that he had no control over. And he is going to use his wrath to do something that the village he lives in has never done: protect the weak and the poor. This is where our story begins. Midnight. Thunk. 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 The sound of wood being struck hard and repeatedly by something. One may assume that it was the same material, others would contradict and say that metal was being used, but those who were of the fighting world knew what that sound was. It was the sound of determination to be recognized, to never be seen as weak again, to achieve the power needed to reach one's goals and dreams. It was the sound of flesh and bone striking wood. If one focused enough, they would be able to hear more than just flesh striking wood. They would hear bones break, sweat dripping, and the heavy panting that is proof of several hours' worth of training. The flesh being stressed for such long periods of time that it has begun to peel away and reveal the flesh that lies underneath the dead skin. And yet they continue to strike, the wood that has been made smooth because of all the hours and strikes put in. The only other sounds would be the painful groans that also reveal great determination that covers most of the pain. Where were those sounds coming from? They were coming from a section that is known as the Forest of Death that lies in the village known as Konohagakure, or the village hidden in the leaves. One may be surprised to find what was making those sounds. Normally, one would expect to find a trained fighter, a cold-blooded killer, or a merciless slaughterer. However, the sounds were coming from none of those. Instead, they were coming from a young boy no older than the age of 10. The young boy had spiky sun-kissed hair with red streaks that was matted down with sweat and looked more red than yellow because of what looked like splotches of blood. The rest was tied in a ponytail that reaches to the middle of his back using a small black rope. The young boy had dazzling blue eyes that were filled with life and yet also depicted horror and tragedy along with abuse and neglect. Some unique features he has are the 3 whisker marks on each cheek and the slightly elongated fangs that peeked from underneath his lips. It was as if he had gained the traits of a feline. Or a fox. He had such a well-built body despite his age, having an 8-pack and muscles that not only showed strength but speed as well. His fists were wrapped in bandages all the way to the middle of his forearm. A thick stain of blood could be seen around the knuckle region and progressively growing with each strike upon the wood. A pair of black hakama pants were what covered his body from the waist down, and the right leg of the pants were torn from the end of the shin. Wrapped around his naked right leg were bandages that those too had splotches of blood. Laying on the ground nearby was a black, hooded, sleeveless jacket that had red marks traveling down the back and torso, and red fur lined the hood. He was unrelenting in his continued strikes upon the massive tree that lied in the forest that had dents and cracks that revealed the power behind his strikes. His strikes seemed to hold no form but were instead a mix of fighting styles from the old times such as Muay Thai, Judo, Taekwondo, and Kyokushin karate, and many other forms of fighting, as well as the modern fighting style of the Goken. And yet, despite all of these fighting styles mixed together, he was able to incorporate these move sets to flow fluently like a stream of water. And could deal a great, if not deadly, amount of damage to an opponent. Left roundhouse kick, flying roundhouse kick, straight right, left knee strike, left cross, right knee strike, right elbow strike. Each strike incorporated with another move, and this move comes from a different fighting style. Each strike also dealt a considerable amount of damage to the trunk that was originally as thick as a grown Akimichi's arm when using their Bubenbaika no Jutsu, but now the tree looked to be straining against its own weight due to now being half as thick from all of the strikes that have been done to it. The boy could feel it. He felt as his bones were broken down, and then healing back together, his flesh tearing itself apart, and then stitching back together, and his wounds opening and closing back. No ordinary human should be able to do this. Even an average ninja would be unable to heal this fast unless there was someone who was regenerating those wounds for them. Each strike brought pain and progress into his body. However, no matter what agony his body felt, no matter how many times his muscles pleaded for him to stop, he just kept on going like it was all that mattered and would go against what he stood for. He had been doing this for so long that it was as if the pain had been numbed from being registered in his brain. He had learned to endure the pain, both physically and emotionally, anyways. It was even before he had begun his training a few years past. Those memories were the fuel that fed his undying desire to get stronger, and no longer be seen as weak ever again. Flashback. Wapak! The horrendous sound of flesh meeting wood in a gruesome display echoed throughout the alleyway. A sudden bone-chilling scream of an anguish-induced child followed next. It was heartbreaking to hear, but not to those who were of the cold heart. The sound continued in a horrendous unorthodox pattern, and the cries seemed to greaten with each contact. Please no more. The whimpering was so heartbreaking to hear. It was the whimpering of a child that had gone through the inferno and back. Ha! Chortled the brutal man holding the punishing stick. No more? Brats like you deserve this kind of beating. With another strike, the child cried out again in pain. Besides, a demon like you doesn't deserve pity. Go back to the hell from where you crawled from and leave the Yondame's family alone. The noise of cries and whips echoed throughout the night, seeming to even reach the distant moon, as if begging for it to help. But not even the great ambassador of the night could provide him aid. He was left alone in the cruel pits of torment by a drunk villager. The man didn't even deserve to be called a villager. He was a sadist. Later that night, he was limping home, bleeding, with tears falling from his eyes. He could never understand why the villagers were so mean to him when he had done nothing wrong. He finally made it home, and like usual the lights were off, meaning his family was already asleep and hadn't even bothered wondering where he was. As he closed the door, however, a lamp was turned on in the living room, showing his father's neutral face staring at him with disappointment. Do you have any idea what time it is? His father asked him with a tone of subtle anger. No, he whispered, his throat feeling raw from all of the previous screams of agony. It is the middle of the night, which means your mother and sister are sleeping. His father told him with a slightly raised tone to show his anger. Which means it is too late for you to even bother coming back to this house. His father said. What would you do if your entering the house woke up your sister and prevented her from having the energy tomorrow for training? I don't know. He whimpered. Exactly. You don't know anything. Unlike your sister, you are nothing compared to her. She is the child of prophecy. She is destined to bring about peace to this world, but she cannot do that if her idiot, weakling of a brother wakes her up and prevents her from training. His father began yelling at him with rage, mentally applauding himself for activating the silencing seals in the living room beforehand. But I don't come back this late on purpose, Naruto whimpered from his father's anger. The villagers were. I don't care what the villagers do to you. His father interrupted. It doesn't matter what they do to you, you are not worth anything when compared to your sister. But he tried to say. Enough. His father shouted, enough with these excuses. I have had enough of them. But there he tried to say again. Silence. His father ordered, this will be the last night I let you come back to the house this late. From now on, if you are ever out this late again, you will need to find somewhere else to spend the night, for I will be locking the doors after a certain time. His father said, now go to your room and think about your actions. He stayed silent as he obeyed his father and headed to his room. Upon entering, he could see that as usual his room was barren save for a bed and dresser that held his clothes. He went to his bed not even changing and lied down to try and go to sleep, all while shedding tears. Within those tearful eyes, however, lied the fire of hate that began to burn up from each painful strike that went into him and each reminder that his family didn't care for him. These people, they were going to pay. They were going to pay for harming the innocent and poor. They were going to pay for forgetting about him. He swore it with the life and hate boiled and raged within him. Flashback end. The mere thought about the past and his so-called family sent his blood boiling. His fists landed harder, and his rage boiled hotter. The tree he was striking on was beginning to cave deeper and had been marred with more of his blood. Then, with a mighty shout, he slammed his fist into the caved region of the tree and it burst into splinters like a balloon. The tree was barely standing upright with the hollowed section he had created through enhancing his fist with chakra. Deadly chakra. Unlike most chakra, his was wild, untamed, ravenous, and vile. Whatever it struck, it was shown no mercy. Whatever got in its way, whether for pride, arrogance, or foolishness, it was beaten to point of near death. The tree was used for not only training, but for equipment in which the blonde had learned to craft through wit and gathered knowledge. That was the reason why it, and soon like its predecessors, it would be beaten to a pulp. Whack. With one last solid kick, the tree was cut down. Thud. Followed by a large thud. Thud. And another thud, albeit softer than the last. The blonde looked at the sky with willpower and determination that contradicted his afflicted features. No matter how much the pain, he always healed up thanks to the very reason why he was hated, the Kyubi no Yoko, in which resided in him. Being a Jinchuriki had its benefits just as it had its flaws. He took advantage of this and trained until every bone broke or every muscle tore. Much alike a green spandex-wearing Jounin and his soon-to-be genin. Random training ground in Konoha. A certain green spandex-wearing, youth-shouting Jounin sneezed. It seems as though there is a fellow martial artist that is training just as hard as me. What a youthful spirit! Shouted said spandex-wearing Jounin. I just died a little writing that sentence. Twitching eyebrow can be seen. Random bedroom in a random house in Konoha. A certain future spandex-wearing, youth-shouting duplicate sneezed in her sleep. Back to the forest. He was going to show them all the reason why they should never have tested and forgotten Uzumaki Naruto. Time skip. When Naruto woke up, he was unsurprised to see the sky as dazzling as it was when the sun shone down onto the earth, and down on him. Every bit of his body ached, but he was used to the pain and in pushing no rocketing himself beyond his limits. This time, however, he couldn't move a muscle. It was as if his nerves were so numb they weren't listening to the orders his brain was giving him. He remembered Kurami, the Kyubi no Yoko's name, often trying to get him to take longer breaks or more frequent breaks, but the blonde never listened and only continued to push himself. Only after a few months that voice vanished, and he couldn't remember the last time he passed out. It was only up until now. As he closed his eyes and allowed his mind to go blank, he never sensed a pair of light brown, pupilless eyes staring at him curiously with a tinge of pink on their cheeks, from seeing his shirtless body in the trees above before leaving to report her findings to the boy's mother and sister. Mindscape. When he opened his eyes once again, the visage of his mindscape was revealed. The mindscape reflected the mental capability and emotional aspect of a person, and what Naruto saw was a beautiful array of mountains that stood tall across an everlasting sea of trees, and the wide reaches of plains that ended at the sandy shores of a beach. The mountain he stood on was akin to the Rocky Mountains, tall, fresh, and yet it had greenery sprouting all along the mountain like spring with the snowy patches of winter. He remembered such beauty hidden behind his mind. He expected it to bloom brightly just like his strength. You always push yourself too far like the idiot you are, huh? The melodic voice made Naruto spin around and immediately rose his arms to defend himself from a powerful roundhouse kick to his right temple. The force was powerful enough to make him skid back a couple yards before he could stop himself. When he brought his arms down, he looked and narrowed his eyes. It was a girl about his age. Unlike Naruto's toned and masculine body, the girl had a petite frame with slim abs and a soft, light skin tone. Her face was shaped softly and flawlessly like a glass figurine, possessing soft lips and beautiful crimson eyes to follow. Her hair was as red as the color blood, cut short with an out-of-bed look with a strand sticking out and framing their face and in between their eyes in which these locks and bangs barely touched the nose. She wore a pair of red kung fu pants with tattered ends similar to Naruto's and a red sleeveless cheapao-style blouse with black trimmings and fastenings. Two things that stood out the most. Firstly, girl had fox ears on the top of her head, and secondly, she had 9 ferocious orange to black tails whiplashing behind her. Think a young Rias Gremory with Tenten's style of dressing. Kurami, Naruto said in a low voice with his eyes sharper than the finest sword in all the elemental nations. Naruto had a question readied, but Kurami answered it before he could ask. All actions have their consequences, Naruto-kun, said Kurami softly, betraying the deadly look in her eyes. You ignored my advice and lost control of yourself and pushed your mind and body to its limit. What that caused was the weakening of the seal, and lo and behold, I'm here. As a matter of fact, I should thank you for doing what you've done. If it weren't for you pushing yourself so far from your limit, I would not have tasted freedom for so many years. The personified Bijou smiled, revealing her small fangs jutting from the underside of her lips. Now then, let me show you my gratitude. Zoom. Naruto's eyes widened up before he sidestepped just in the nick of time before Kurami could connect a palm strike with his torso. Kurami, despite normally being such a huge Bijou, knew how to fight using martial arts. If it was anyone else, Kurami would have already killed them with that single palm strike by how fast and strong it was courtesy to her Bijou status. The red-streaked blonde got into a stance of the left foot forward, right foot back, body turned slightly to the right, with his left arm in front of him ready to strike and his right arm kept close to his body while being bent vertical from the elbow down. You want to get strong, right, Naruto-kun? Smiled Kurami before going into a stance that was just like Naruto's stance. Well then, let me help you with that. The battle had begun, with Kurami and Naruto looking like they were both on even ends. However, Naruto was clearly being worn down by Kurami, who didn't even look tired. In fact, she was smiling both in amusement and interest as Naruto countered and dodged her blows. It was as expected from her host: powerful, daring, calculative, handsome. Naruto was much better than being the buffoon of a host he was before. As much as Kurami desired to be free again, staying with Naruto might not be as bad, she thought. Naruto back-flipped to dodge Kurami's sweeping kick. Once he landed, he aimed for a roundhouse kick to the head, which Kurami caught immediately. Naruto, with his reactions being sharper than ever, used his other leg to perform a backflip kick aimed for Kurami's chin. The personified Bijou let go of Naruto's and avoided the kick by flawlessly leaning back. When Naruto landed, they exchanged blows once again, with each blow wearing out a fighter. As time passed, however, that fighter wasn't Kurami. Naruto, despite his bones creaking, shot out with an elbow strike only for it to be sidestepped before he received a palm strike to his abdomen. The blow was so strong that it forced air out of the red-streaked blonde's mouth and made him hunch forward. Quickly, the personified Kyuubi no Yoko took Naruto down by placing her right leg behind her host's leg and pulling her own leg back while also pushing forward using his forehead. Down went Naruto with a loud thud. Kurami pinned him down by straddling his lap while using her tails to hold down Naruto's wrists and ankles. The red-streaked blonde realized that he was pinned and wouldn't be able to move unless his captor wishes it. In the past, it had been man to win against the Bijou, but now it had been the Bijou who had won against man. This is what happens when you push yourself too far, Naruto-kun whispered Kurami with her head down and eyes being shadowed by her hair. A frown on her face replaced the smile that lied her face earlier as she stroked Naruto's bleeding cheek. The frown growing as she felt the warm liquid on her fingertips. You grow weak instead of strong, you injure yourself while bringing no benefit, and you cause your enemies to triumph over you because you couldn't hold your ambitions in check. You would have been dead a long time ago, if it weren't for me. That was true. If it hadn't have been for Kurami, he would not have healed this quick and learned this fast. If it weren't for Kurami, his entire body would have been paralyzed a long time ago, with only his eyes and mouth being capable of movement. If it weren't for Kurami, he would have suffered for many days and nights. And finally, if it weren't for Kurami, he would not have gotten this far in strength and training. You owe me, we both know that, whispered the Kyuubi no Yoko as she made Naruto sit up using her tails. Naruto said nothing as he looked down, his eyes clenched shut with his teeth gritting in frustration, pain, and self-disappointment. His hands were being held behind his back by Kurami's soft tails, with her tails gently swaying back forth behind her back. Naruto was not going to be a fool and attempt to struggle, for who knows what Kurami might do. What on earth do I owe you? Asked Naruto in a silent, growl-like way as he looked up at the still frowning Bijou and his eyes widened upon the sight before him. She was crying. Kurami had finally lifted her head, and she showed that her eyes were filled with tears. Tears of sadness, but not for herself, he realized, but for him. I want you to take better care of yourself, Naruto-kun, whispered Kurami as she began to let the tears fall. I want you to take it easier after heavy amounts of training. Take days off of training to relax and recuperate. I want you to be stronger, but not at the risk of killing yourself. She slowly raised her voice until she was yelling. But why do you care what I do to myself? Wondered Naruto, for he was confused. Why would the strongest of the Bijou care whether he trained himself to the ground and passed out? Why would the strongest Bijou care if he was doing more harm than good to himself? Isn't it obvious? Asked Kurami rhetorically as she inched forward, slowly closing the distance between their faces. Alarms began to scream at Naruto by how close the personified Bijou got. He couldn't react, he was still frozen from seeing her crying. It's because I love you, whispered Kurami as she finally closed the distance between her lips and his. Naruto's eyes widened even more than before, and his face turned red. He had no idea the strongest of the 9 Bijou felt like this towards him. It was then he realized what everything was about: the fight, the tears, the requests for him to be easier on himself. It was because she loved him. Naruto, now realizing how much of an ass he had been, managed to snap himself out of his freezing phase and relaxed into the kiss, returning it. When Kurami had finally connected her lips to his, she felt like she was on cloud 9. She had finally managed to kiss the one she had fell in love with. And when Kurami felt Naruto relax and return the kiss, she felt like she was in heaven because she had not only successfully confessed her feelings to the boy she fell in love with, but he also returned her feelings. Kurami then released his arms when she felt him return the kiss, and she then felt him cup her cheek with his left hand and held her waist with his right. They continued for what felt like hours but had actually been 2 minutes before the need for air became too much. They released the kiss and stared at each other's flushed faces while leaning their forehead on the other's, panting for air, all while smiling at each other. So Naruto asked after a brief silence, what does this make us? he awkwardly asked after the brief silence. Kurami giggled at the question. Well, most people would consider themselves a couple after something like this, she said. Naruto sighed in relief at that, as he was afraid this might have all been a prank. Well, I guess as your boyfriend, I should do a better job of taking care of myself in order to not make you worry, he said, which got the reaction of her face brightening and then squealing and then pouncing on him. He stayed there on the floor, letting her hug him while constantly whispering, thank yous, at his response to her previous requests. So, when do you think I can get up? He asked. Why? Don't you like holding me? She asked cutely while tilting her head slightly to the side. No one can possibly be this cute, Naruto mentally shouted before replying, yes, but it feels weird to be holding a girl whose body looks my age. Kurami's face took on a mischievous expression when she heard that. Oh, so as long as I don't look like a child it's okay to stay here? She asked while grinning mischievously. He was confused by that. What do you mean? Isn't this how you naturally look? He asked, confused by what she meant by that. It was now Kurami's turn to laugh. Silly Naruto-kun, she said, with a teasing tone that made Naruto worry, all while beginning to stand up. You didn't honestly think this is what I really look like, did you? She asked while still grinning. Naruto didn't have time to respond because in the next second, poof, Kurami was covered in a puff of smoke, and when it cleared, Naruto witnessed the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Where Kurami once stood was longer a 10-year-old looking girl. What stood there was a drop-dead gorgeous vixen. Kurami stood there with her huge, gravity-defying double F-cup breasts, and Perky stood proudly on her chest, blatantly for Naruto to see. Her curvy, well-built body accompanied by her plump, mouth-watering thighs. Her heart-shaped face was accompanied with pink, porcelain-like lips and beautiful, orange-red slitted eyes. She had 3 whisker marks on each cheek similar to Naruto's but being much more prominent. Her hair had grown up to her upper rear with the addition of 2 braided locks framing on either side of her face. Well? Is this better, Naruto-kun? She asked while leaning forward with her arms crossed underneath her bust, making them look bigger than they already were. Naruto went red-faced, wide-eyed, and felt his throat dry at the sight while clamping his left hand over his face to stave off the nosebleed that threatened to break through. I mean, why you? Naruto stuttered while still staring at Kurami's naked body. Kurami giggled at his reaction and decided to take pity on the poor boy before he passed out in his mind as well. Poof! In another puff of smoke, Kurami can now be seen wearing a loose, red kimono-style blouse with black trimmings and no sleeves, red kung fu pants with the kanji on both thighs meaning fox, and black kung fu shoes to finish. Naruto sighed in relief upon seeing this, with his cheeks still containing a tinge of red. Naruto then looked back at Kurami with such determination that it made her blush. Well, since we are now going to be going out, how about we find a way for you to get out of my mind and into the real world? Naruto said, and that made Kurami brighten with a blush on her cheeks. Actually, Naruto-kun, I have a method to get out of here, Kurami said in a tone that, had Naruto caught, would make him extremely nervous and blush, while walking towards him. Really? That's great. What do you? Naruto began to say before he stopped and yelped in shock and surprise when Kurami came up to him and bit his neck. Suddenly, Naruto started to black out, and the last thing he felt was heat rushing through his neck before vanishing from his mindscape. Forest of Death. When Naruto woke up, the first thing he realized was that he felt very heavy for some reason. And not from the soreness of his body. He looked down, and there, lying on his torso, was Kurami. She was holding onto him like a lifeline that would disappear if she let go. He probably would have let her hold onto him a while longer if he didn't have things to do today. Kurami, he began, can you let me up? Kurami, for her part, snuggled closer and held him even tighter, which began to cause a sense of discomfort for him. Pet me, requested Kurami as she used one of her tails to gently grab hold of one of his arms and guide it to her head. Silently chuckling, Naruto moved his arms so that he was now petting Kurami in between where her ears were. Kurami began to sigh and moan in pleasure at having Naruto pet her. It almost felt as good as kissing him, almost. Which reminds her. Kiss me. Upon this request, he paused in her petting and looked down at her with a raised eyebrow and a slight smirk. She felt this and looked back at him with a big smile on her face, with an expectant look in her eyes. Seeing this look, he chuckled again, then cupped her chin using between his thumb and index finger, tilted her up, and softly kissed her on the lips, which she was more than happy to return. After their kiss, she let him get up while also getting up herself. Once the red-streaked blonde got up, he began to pop and crack his bones. The way they crunched was immensely satisfying, as it briefly and quickly took away all of the stress from the previous day's workout. When Naruto cracked his neck to the side, he remembered when Kurami bit him on his neck. He instinctively touched his neck and found the bite mark. When he found the mark, he instinctively began to rub it, which got a chuckle out of Kurami. Kurami, Naruto began. Kurami answered, showing he had her attention. Why exactly did you bite me? Naruto asked. To get out of the seal, silly. Kurami answered with a childlike innocence that seemed to add to her sex appeal. I know that, but if what's simply pushing your chakra through, then you could have simply held onto me and done it like that, Naruto said, still confused on the need for the bite. Oh! Kurami exclaimed in understanding of what he was asking. Well, that's easy. I marked you as my mate, she replied again with childlike innocence. Naruto whirled around in surprise. Mate! Naruto exclaimed. Well, yeah? Foxes don't having boyfriends and girlfriends. We have mates, Kurami explained, giggling at his surprised, wide-eyed expression. Doesn't that basically mean we're married now? Naruto asked, now beginning to calm down. Yup, exclaimed Kurami, but we're not officially married until you mark me too, Kurami further explained, while turning around and walking as if conducting a lecture. Naruto raised an eyebrow and smirked at this information. Really? Naruto asked, beginning to come up behind Kurami without her knowledge. Yup. And that is done by you biting my neck as well. But don't worry, I don't expect you to do that right. No, Kurami continued explaining until she turned around and bite. Naruto surprised her by biting her neck as well, by using his elongated fangs that he got by channeling chakra into them. Oh! Kurami moaned in surprise and pleasure at the feeling of Naruto biting her neck. Once Naruto let go, he grinned at her with his signature fox grin. Well, Naruto exclaimed, looks like we are now officially married. Kurami could only blush at this, so shocked by the turn of events. While Naruto looked around for his jacket that was somewhere in the area, Kurami was having some thoughts about this turn of events. Did he just? Ugh. And then he just grinned like it was something simple and easy. I want him. I want him bad. And with mating season coming soon, I'll most likely drain him dry unless I get some relief before mating season. As Kurami thought the last part, she turned to look at Naruto, who had finally found his jacket and currently dusting it off. He better give me some relief even if we don't go all the way, or else I'll jump him and have my way with him. While this was happening, neither Naruto nor Kurami had any knowledge of a creature watching the two. This creature looked like a spider, but not just any old spider. This spider looked to be made of gold while looking mechanical instead of organic. It had 8 blue eyes that looked on in curiosity. Its body seemed to have a flowing wind design. It seemed to be looking at both Kurami and Naruto, but if one paid attention, they would see it is solely staring at Naruto. Interesting. It spoke while still staring at Naruto and recognizing the energy that he seemed to give of. Could it be? Meanwhile, at the Uzumaki household, while Naruto was going through his ordeal with Kurami in the Forest of Death, the owner of the light brown, pupilless eyes was currently making her way through the grounds of the Uzumaki compound in a hurry in order to report her findings to her teacher. Eventually, she found her teacher in the backyard of the main house training her daughter in the way of the sword. There stood Kushina Uzumaki, mother to Naruto and Naruko Uzumaki, ex-Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko, and ex-wife of Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. She had fair skin, violet eyes, and the common red hair of the Uzumaki clan. She had a feminine build with curves in the right places. This is evident by her thin waist, wide birthing hips, and her F-cup breasts. Her red hair, normally, reached down to her ankles with shoulder-length strands framing her face, all held with a black clip. Currently, however, she had her hair tied in a high ponytail using black-colored rope, similar to Naruto, with the shoulder-length strands of hair still there. She was currently wearing black shinobi sandals, black form-fitting pants, with her ninja pouches on her left thigh and behind her right hip. She had on the standard Konoha Jounin flak jacket, while underneath, she had a black short-sleeved shirt that was over a black mesh shirt. On her right arm were the 2 headbands for Konoha and Yuzushiogakure that she normally wears. All of this shows that she's back on active duty of being a Konoha ninja. Currently, Kushina was training Naruko in her homeland sword style, the whirlpool style, and was having great success. Naruko took to the sword just like her mother, and Kushina couldn't be any prouder. But then, while she was taking pride in her daughter, she remembered that she still did not know where her son was ever since she left Minato and the Namikaze estate. Flashback. The very same night that Naruto was told he will be locked out from now on, his mother, Kushina, had heard him come in and went to go see why he had come back so late. But then she heard her husband Minato, talking and yelling at Naruto, and she was distraught at what she heard. She has always thought that family comes before anything, and when she met Minato, she had thought she found someone who she could be happy with and have a family with. But when she heard all of what was said, she quickly and quietly went back to bed, and pretended to be asleep when her husband came into the room. She heard grumbling and disdain about how Naruto was a weakling and would never amount to his younger sister Naruko, who was a couple minutes younger than Naruto. She couldn't believe that the man she had fell in love with could be so heartless to her child. And to say they will have to find shelter outside if they couldn't get home quick enough was appalling to her. The next morning, she went to Naruto's room, to talk to him and make sure he was okay, but when she got there, she was so frightened by what she found, she began to tear up. The room was barren, the dresser had been emptied and the window was open with the curtain flowing due to the gentle breeze that was let in through the window. When she saw this, she screamed. This got the attention of her daughter and husband. They both went to see what was wrong, and when they saw why she screamed and was currently crying, they each had different reactions. Naruko began to cry alongside Kushina while holding her. Minato, however, gained a neutral expression, believing that now that the weakling has left, he can better train the child of prophecy. He thought everything was going his way until Kushina stood up and glared at him with tear-filled eyes. She began shouting at him for not treating Naruto like the child he is and treating him terribly with neglect. After her rant, Minato's only reply was, "If he ran away, then that must mean he was weaker than I thought, and now I can finally train the child of prophecy, the way I wanted to without that distraction." When Kushina heard this, she was livid. She told Minato that she would never let him train her daughter. And when he tried to argue that she couldn't do that because she was his wife and Naruko is his daughter as well, Kushina had finally had it. She let Minato know that she had heard all that he had told Naruto the previous night and that she was disgusted in who he had become, and that she would be leaving him with Naruko to the Uzumaki compound where they will live, and, when they find Naruto, they will welcome him with open arms whether he is weaker than Naruko or not. Minato was frozen stiff in shock. He couldn't believe this. His wife, the mother of his children, had just said she would be leaving him all because he wouldn't take care of a weakling. This was an outrage. He was not about to let all of these years of training his daughter go to waste over a weakling. As he was stuck in his thoughts, Kushina and Naruko packed up their belongings and were out the door. After they left, they heard Minato shout in anger and frustration that she could not do this to him. Immediately, following the shout, Minato came running out with a kunai in hand, planning on forcing Kushina to stay. However, he forgot that before she retired, her epithet was the red-hot-blooded habanero, and so when he struck, he was not expecting to be suddenly looking up at the sky while feeling pain in his left shoulder. It took Minato a total of 2 seconds to realize what had happened. Kushina had moved so fast he hadn't seen her move, cut off his left arm at shoulder length, burned the wound shut, and knocked him on his back. Once everything had caught up to him, he shouted in pain while gripping the wound with his right hand in an effort to stave off the pain, only resulting in agitating the wound, causing more pain. When he shouted, 3 ANBU suddenly appeared with weapons drawn. The ANBU that appeared were Snake, Dog, and Cat. Snake had violet, pineapple-shaped hair and the snake mask on their face, Dog had gravity-defying white hair and the dog mask on, and finally, Cat had long, straight, purple hair. "Hokage-sama, what has happened?" Dog asked, with a voice that clearly showed this was a male, while he helped the Hokage stand while also looking around for the danger along with the other two. "Unbu. Arrest Kushina Uzumaki for attacking the Hokage." Minato tried to order, but instead of the collaboration of highs he should have received, all he got were the ANBU, turning to look at him, while all three tilted their heads showing they were confused. "Why are we arresting Sensei?" came the voice of Snake and Cat at the same time, clearly indicating they were female. "Because she just attacked me and cut off my arm. Or is the lack of my left arm not obvious?" Minato yelled rhetorically. "Is this true, Sensei?" asked Snake, while Cat looked at her teacher as well. "Yes, but maybe he should have also mentioned that it was in self-defense when he came running at me and my daughter with a kunai for attempting to leave him and this kami-forsaken compound because his mistreatment of my son has led to him running away and disappearing." Kushina replied with the shouting acute "yeah" in the background. "Hokage-sama, is this true?" Dog asked, while he and the two other ANBU frowned from behind their masks. "So what if it's true?" Minato shouted, "As your Hokage, I order you to arrest her." At this the three ANBU shook their heads while sheathing their weapons. Dog replied, "I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, but unless she attacked you first, then we cannot do anything about what has happened to you other than take you to the hospital." Minato growled in anger at this, and glared at Kushina and said, "This isn't over, Kushina. I will have my child of prophecy, and no one will get in my way. With that said, the three A and B were about to leave, but then Kushina said, Snake, Cat, can you wait for a moment? Snake and Cat looked at each other before looking at Dog, and all three nodded their heads before Dog left to the Hokage to the hospital, leaving the two A and B with Kushina and Naruto. What is it, Kushina-sensei? Snake asked, while both her and Cat looked at Kushina. Kushina frowned. Can you two take off your masks so we can talk face to face? Snake and Cat looked at each other before shrugging their shoulders and taking off their masks, revealing the faces that lied underneath. Once Snake took off her mask, it revealed a set of light brown, pupilless eyes looking at Kushina with curiosity. She has lightly tanned skin and a pair of soft, pink lips. This is Anko Midarashi, former apprentice of Sannin Orochimaru, and former student of Kushina Uzumaki. When Cat took off her mask, it revealed a pair of brown eyes filled with curiosity that were focused on Kushina, fair skin, and soft red lips. This is Yugao Yuzuki, a fellow former student of Kushina Uzumaki. So, what can we help you with? Asked Yugao, as she was curious because normally Kushina would talk to them and ignore them leaving their masks on. This could only mean she was serious and needed a personal favor. I need both of you to help me find my son, Naruto, begged Kushina, with eyes filled with tears and motherly love while on her knees. I will pay you and anyone you get to help you. Just please help me find my son. Anko and Yugao were surprised. They, in all the time they knew Kushina, had never seen her on her knees or crying for that matter. And the tone that she was speaking to them with was so heart-wrenching that they felt they were about to begin tearing up. They both moved to Kushina and held her, comforting her, with Naruto coming over to help comfort her mother as well. Don't worry about money, Kushina-sensei, said Anko. We will find him for you and make sure you are reunited with him. Yeah, agreed Yugao softly. We'll find him and bring him back to you. No! Exclaimed Kushina, surprising the two kunoichi. No. I don't want you to bring him back. I have faith that we will meet again in the future, and that he will come home. Kushina explained upon seeing the accusing looks from the three other females there. What I want you to do is report to me what you found, like where he is, how he looks, and what he was doing when you found him, continued Kushina. Anko and Yugao both nodded in understanding, before Anko looked nervous about something which was not missed by Kushina. Is something wrong? Kushina asked, worry evident in her voice. Anko now had the attention of all three other females. Kushina had a look of worry along with Yugao, and Naruto just looked curious. What if, started Anko, when we find him, he's dead? After Anko asked this question, there was a brief silence. During the silence, the tension in the air seemed to rise as Kushina's eyes were shadowed. Yugao looked between Anko and Kushina nervously, and Naruto looked to be on the verge of tears when she heard this question. This continued for a minute before Kushina sighed and looked straight at Anko. He won't be, came the simple reply from Kushina. Well, started Anko, how can you be so sure? Because, Kushina answered, now looking up and revealing eyes with pure determination and faith, he is my son, and if he's anything like me, then he will fight and survive. Kushina replied, with total faith that her son will be alive and well when he is found. Flashback end. After going down memory lane, Kushina snapped back out of it and focused on her daughter. Naruto looked like the spitting image of her when she was 10 years old with some slight differences. Naruto, like her mother, had straight, red hair that reached down to her waist that was currently braided, with the strands of hair framing her face. She had violet eyes that currently held the fire of determination in them. She had a slender, petite feminine frame and was currently holding a blunted katana for her training. She was wearing a red battle kimono with black-white trimmings, short sleeves, and ended just past her hips. On the back lied the symbol of Konoha on top of the symbol for Yuzushio. She had black, form-fitting biker shorts with a pouch on her right thigh that was made of two small pouches put together. One for her ninja tools such kunai, shuriken, ninja wire etc., and the other was for medical supplies. And finally she was wearing a pair of black shinobi sandals. Currently, Naruto was training her heart out, unable to wait for the day she will be able to stand by her brother. She knew what happened that night because just like her mother, Naruto had been awake the night Naruto came home, and she hated her father for what he said. She had been planning on talking with Naruto the next morning, in order to get him to go with her so that they could talk to their father together so Naruto could receive training and be treated better. However, before she could even talk to him, she found out that he had ran away. She was heartbroken that her brother would leave like that, but that was also the day that she swore to herself that the next time she sees him, she will welcome him with open arms. Naruto and Kushina were broken from their musings when they felt a presence join them in the backyard. They turned to look at the person and were surprised to see a panting Anko, looking ecstatic despite being out of breath. Anko hadn't changed much over the years. at least personality-wise. She had retired from ANBU and is now a Tokubetsu Jounin. She now wears a fitted mesh bodysuit that covers from her neck to her thighs, but does nothing to hide her double E-cup breasts, a tan trench coat with a purple seam, a dark orange miniskirt that emphasizes her wide hips and bubble ass, dark blue belt, and pale gray shin guards. Along with her forehead protector, she has a snake fang necklace. All in all, she is now one hell of a looker. Once Anko regained herself, she looked at the mother-daughter duo with a smile, and said 3 words that gave them more hope these past 3 years than anything before. I found him. When they both heard that, they looked just as ecstatic as Anko. Kushina immediately flared her chakra in a specific pattern, and before her were all the people that had agreed to help her look for her son. Gathered around were her former students, Kurinai Yuhi, Hana Inuzuka, and Yugao Yuzuki, as well as her fellow mothers, Sum Inuzuka, Mikoto Uchiha, and Hitomi Hyuga. Kurinai is a fair-skinned woman with a curvy build. She has long, black untamed hair reaching her upper back, and currently has a regular Konoha forehead protector around her forehead. She is wearing a red mesh blouse that only has the right sleeve visible, and resembles bandages with rose thorn patterns on them. This, however, does nothing to hide her E-cup breasts, and emphasizes the fact that she has a bubble butt. She also has bandages wrapped around her hands and is wearing regular, black shinobi sandals. She has purple eyeshadow, and red lipstick that bring attention to her lips. However, her most unique feature would be her eyes. They are a pair of ruby-colored eyes that have an extra ring in them. Next is Hana Inuzuka. Like her mother, she has the Inuzuka fawn tattoos on her cheeks, and standing next to her are the 3 Heimer brothers. Hana, however, does not have the natural wild look most Inuzuka have. She has long brown hair, that is in a ponytail with 2 locks framing her face. She has soft brown eyes, and soft lips that have a light pink shade of lipstick. She is currently wearing a form-fitting version of the Konoha Jounin flak jacket, with no pockets, and emphasizes her F-cup breasts, with it being unzipped just a little bit to reveal some cleavage. She has a brace on her left forearm and wears bracelets on her right arm. On her upper right arm is a tattoo that resembles a flower with bandages wrapped just beneath it. She wears a pair of gray, form-fitting shorts that are cut just above the knee and adds attention to her thick thighs and blue shinobi sandals. Yugao hasn't really changed much over the years. She still has her long, straight, purple hair, soft, red lips and brown eyes. She wears the standard ANBU uniform that hugs her C-cup breasts and her big ass. Then came Sum Inuzuka. She has the standard Inuzuka wild look of wild hair, slit pupils and slightly enlarged fangs. She has long, spiky, untamed brown hair, the standard Inuzuka fawn tattoos on her cheeks with additional marks over her eyes. She has dark purple lipstick applied to her soft lips and wears the standard Konoha shinobi outfit of a black bodysuit and green flak jacket that does nothing to hide her double F-cup breast, big ass, and mouth-watering thighs. She has the sleeves slightly rolled up, bandages wrapped around her legs, and wears regular blue shinobi sandals. The next 2 are 2 that even they know should have been dead a long time ago. First is Mikoto Uchiha, one of the 3 survivors of the Uchiha clan. She has long, straight black hair with bangs hanging on either side of her face to roughly frame her cheeks, soft lips, and black eyes. She is currently wearing a dark purple blouse that hugs her F-cup breasts, a red plum skirt that hugs her childbirthing hips, a light yellow apron, and a pair of black sandals. She is one of 3 survivors along with her 2 twins. Finally is Hitomi Hyuga, the ex-wife of the Hyuga clan head. She possesses fair skin, soft lips, long, dark purple hair that flows slightly past her waist and side bangs framing her face down to her shoulders, and she has the standard eyes that define her as a Hyuga. She is wearing a purple, long-sleeved kimono that hugs her G-cup bust with Zora sandals on her feet. These 2, for the past year, have been wondering how they are alive along with their friends and family. Hitomi was registered to having an incurable disease that should have killed her last year, and Mikoto was about to get cut down during the Uchiha massacre, but both somehow survived. Hitomi, the day after she was told she was going to die, suddenly woke up feeling better than ever. As for Mikoto, during the Uchiha massacre, where her eldest son, Itachi Uchiha, slaughtered their entire clan, she was about to be struck down, when suddenly she found herself in the training grounds of her clan's compound. Both were confused about the sequence of events but had thanked their lucky stars that they could continue raising their children. What happened? Is everything all right? Came the rapid release of questions from Mikoto. Yes, everything is all right. In fact, everything is better than all right, replied Kushina. This received confused looks. So, why did you call us? Came Sim's question to the situation. The others agreed with Sim's question as they were just as confused, until Kushina looked at Anko with an expectant look. Anko found him. Came the simple response. Upon hearing this, All the women focused on Anko, who was looking like she was ready to burst out with excitement. Really? The women exclaimed. Anko nodded her head with a big smile on her lips and said, "Yeah, I found him," came her response before she remembered how she found the target of their searches and blushed. Something that was not missed by anyone. "Anko, how is Naruto?" Kushina questioned, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Well," came the nervous reply, with Anko scratching the back of her head, "he is doing fine if that is what you're asking. In fact, according to the fallen tree that lied on the ground nearby this morning, I would say he did some seriously heavy amounts of training last. For several hours by the looks of it." Upon hearing he was alright, all of the women sighed in relief that he was doing alright. However, their interests were piqued upon hearing that Naruto had been training. "He was training?" some asked with very clear interest. Anko nodded her head and replied, "Yup. From what I saw, he was using a tree and had completely cut it down." Hitomi was the next to reply, "Cutting down a tree during training isn't that hard to do. What weapon did he use?" However, the answer she got was something that none of them were expecting, especially not Kushina and Naruto. "He didn't use a weapon from what I saw, and this wasn't just any old tree." "What kind of tree was it?" asked Kurinai, now curious about the boys' training method along with Sim, Kushina, and the rest of the women there. Anko's answer surprised them all and filled Kushina with pride. It was one of the oldest, thickest, hardest trees in the forest of death. Upon hearing this, all of the women were amazed, because those trees could even handle the blast from an explosive note and keep standing with only a minor chip of bark as damage. While they were all amazed by this feat, Hana then remembered something. "Hey, Anko." Anko and the rest looked at Hana, wondering what she was thinking. "Yeah? Why were you blushing when you remembered that you found him?" Silence. Complete silence. Then, all of a sudden all attention was focused on the currently bright red Anko. "Well?" Hana asked. "Sehoirt," mumbled Anko. "What?" Yugao asked, now curious on what could cause Anko, of all people, to blush. "Bsehd no shtn," mumbled Anko again. "What?" Kurinai asked, now feeling very curious along with the rest on why Anko, of all people, would blush. "Because he didn't have a shirt on," shouted Anko. "So, you're blushing because a 10-year-old was shirtless?" Some asked, questioning whether the Tokubetsu Jounin should be around kids. "Trust me when I say he looked like no 10-year-old any of us have seen," Anko replied, now earning everyone's interest again. "What do you mean? What did he look like?" came the innocent question of Naruto. She was curious on what her older brother looked like. "He looked like a god," Anko answered. "He was easily over 5 feet, with an 8-pack that looked like they could crush stone, and muscles that could provide power, but weren't bulging to take away speed. He was wearing black hakama pants that had been torn on the right leg to show his leg up to just before his knee. And he had bandages around his leg from what I could see, as well as both arms up to the middle of his forearms, and they were covered in blood, showing that he was having a serious training session. And his hair was blonde with red streaks, that at the time looked more red due to what I believe was splotches of blood, and had grew out to where he now ties his hair in a ponytail that reaches his lower back, all tied with a black rope like yours, Kushina, with fierce blue eyes and 3 whisker marks on each cheek and slightly elongated fangs. And laying nearby, he had a black, sleeveless, hooded jacket that had red marks trailing down the torso and back, with crimson-colored fur lining the hood," Anko described. As Anko was describing what Naruto looked like, each woman began imagining how he looked and all began blushing at the sight. Even Kushina and Naruto were blushing. "Well," came the shaky reply of Kushina, who was still lightly blushing at the image, "I guess we can get a better look at him when he goes to the academy for graduation." Replies of "yups" and "that's right" were passed around before they all settled on looking at Kushina, wondering what they were going to be doing now that her son has been found. Kushina, realizing what they were wondering, began to think, before coming up with an answer. "Why don't we all train together and we train our daughters together so that they can hopefully make a good impression on Naruto when we see him at the academy graduation?" Everyone agreed wholeheartedly, and began to make plans for the future to come. Time skip 6 years. Over the past 6 years, Naruto has made tremendous progress. He is currently sleeping in his new home deep in the forest of death that is currently hidden, along with his presence and chakra, all thanks to Kurami. What? When you're sealed inside of Kushina Uzumaki, whose husband was Minato Namikaze, and both were seal masters, you're bound to learn a couple of things. Anyways, Naruto can currently be seen sleeping, and he has most certainly grown up. Naruto is now a little over 6 feet tall, currently the second tallest person in Konoha, just under Ibiki. He now has a crazy strong 12-pack, muscular arms and legs that provide both power and speed. And think Apachai build from Kenichi, the mightiest disciple for reference. He has naturally tan skin, showing all the time he puts into training. His hair still reaches down to his lower back and is still tied in a ponytail with black rope. He has 3 whisker marks on each cheek that have mostly faded over time. Naruto-kun, it's time to get up. You don't want to be late for graduation. Came the sound of a voice from outside his door. Upon hearing this, Naruto began to stir. He sat up and yawned, showing his still longer than normal canines. He scratched the back of his head before he opened his eyes to reveal the dazzling blue eyes that are filled with determination, life, and such an immense love that one would become lost staring into them for too long. Alright, I'm up, Naruto said. Okay, and when you're done, breakfast is ready. The voice replied with a chipper tone. Alright, Naruto replied. Naruto got up and opened the door to head to the bathroom to shower and brush his teeth. Once that was done, he went back to his room and proceeded in getting ready and gather his clothes. He went down the stairs and was greeted to the sight of his mate, Kurami, cooking some eggs for breakfast. Kurami hadn't changed over the years and was still the lovable, flirtatious vixen that he remembered. Good morning, Kurami, Naruto said with a smile. Good morning, Naruto-kun. I'm just finishing the eggs, then breakfast will be ready. Kurami replied without turning around. Focused on cooking the eggs. Alright, that's fine, Naruto said while taking a seat. After breakfast, Kurami tilted her head to the side and asked, So, are you ready for today? Absolutely, Naruto exclaimed, 100% confident that he will pass the test. Alright. That's what I like to hear from my mate, exclaimed Kurami, while her tails swayed excitedly, showing her excitement. Well, Naruto began, as he began standing up, I'll let you know how everything goes later. Alright, Kurami replied, make sure to kick plenty of ass out there today. Naruto simply chuckled at Kurami's antics, while waving back at her. Time skip. At the academy, parents could be seen everywhere waiting excitedly for when their children come out with their headbands showing they passed and are now ninja. One small group, however, was more than just mothers. This group was made up of Kushina Uzumaki, Suminozuka, Mikoto Uchiha, Hitomi Hyuga, Hana Inuzuka, Kurinai Yuhi, Yugao Yuzuki, and Enko Mitarashi. They were waiting for their children or sister or students depending on who you asked. While they were waiting, they were talking about who would graduate and be on what team. So, who else do you think will pass? Enko asked, as she had complete faith that Naruto and the rest would pass. The Aburame and Nara for sure, came the reply of Kurinai. Both will no doubt pass all 3 parts due to being trained in their respective clan jutsu and the academy jutsu. The Akimichi and the Yamanaka will no doubt pass as well, Hana added. That is very true, and that Haruno girl will pass, but that will mostly be due to her book smarts than the actually Kanai, Shuriken and Taijutsu segments. She has, after all, only recently gotten out of her fangirl phase, added some, acknowledging the former fangirl. The rest agreed with their assessments before realizing that the area was quiet and that all of the adults in the area were looking in a direction. The women with blushes and lust in their eyes and the males with envy. When they all turned to the direction, the group also began to blush at the sight before them. Walking to the entrance of the school was a 16-year-old boy. They were 6 feet and 3 inches, making them the second tallest person in Konoha. They wore black hakama pants with red flames designed on the bottom of the legs, all held with a gold-colored rope. Tied around their waist was a black jacket with gold trimmings. On their clearly muscular torso was an open, black, sleeveless vest that had gold trimmings. He also has bandages wrapped around his arms from his forearms to his hands, and instead of shoes he wore bandages wrapped around from his feet to his shins. He had blonde spiky hair with red streaks, all tied in a ponytail with a black rope, and reached his lower back with several bangs framing his face. He had dazzling blue eyes like sapphires that radiated confidence and determination. A calm smile that told everyone he had confidence in himself. And a unique feature were the 3 whisker marks that lies on both cheeks. Think Natsu's vest from Fairy Tail Season 1, Azura's pants from the video game, Azura's Wrath, Apachai's style of wrappings from Kenichi, the mightiest disciple, and his hairstyle looks like bands from 7 Deadly Sins but is not blue. Upon seeing the whisker marks, the Kushina's group froze in shock at realizing who this red-streaked blonde god was. Naruto! The group exclaimed mentally so as to not draw attention to themselves. Naruto made his way to the academy doors and went inside. while Naruto went inside the group were having thoughts about the Naruto they just saw. Oh my god! My baby boy has gotten so big and handsome, thought Kushina with pride and a blush, surprised at her son's growth, and he looks so strong too. How much of my son's life have I missed? Kushina thought, feeling sad at the last part. Oh my! That was Naruto. Damn! He doesn't look anything like when I saw him when he was younger or in the forest, thought Anko, surprised by how much Naruto changed from when she would rescue him from the villagers and when she saw him in the forest 6 years ago. I wonder how big he down there? Anko thought pervertedly with a blush. Geez! What did that kid eat for breakfast for all these years? Rocks, mentally exclaimed Sim, and that was Naruto. Damn! And that feeling when he passed by felt like that of grade A alpha material. Sim thought with a blush when she focused on when he passed by. Wait, what's that feeling? Sim began thinking as she looked down and realized she was wet. What the hell? I'm wet by him just passing by. And he wasn't even doing anything, realized Sim with her blush getting darker, once she saw she had a darker spot by her nether regions. Wait. How's Hannah? Sim thought worriedly before looking at her daughter and saw the state she was in. Currently, Hannah had a massive blush on her face and had fallen to her knees, quivering at the feeling of such a strong alpha passing by, while still staring at the academy doors with dazed eyes. Holy! Exclaimed Sim in surprise at realizing that her daughter had just entered pseudo heat by Naruto just passing by. I have to take her home so she can get a hold of herself or else she may just jump his bones when we all go talk to him. Sim planned, before looking down at herself again and thinking, me too actually. While Sim was planning on handling her daughter and herself, Hannah was going through her own issues. Alpha must mate with Alpha, Hannah thought robotically. Wait. What am I thinking? I can't just mate him. Even though he has such big muscles, and such perfect abs, and that strong alpha aura, Hannah thought, before realizing she was getting deeper into her lust. Hannah looked over at her mother who looked at her and nodded before they quickly body flickered, with their Ninken partners following close behind, home to get control of themselves. That was Naruto. How? Kurinai mentally exclaimed, he looks nothing like what Anko described all those years ago. Kurinai was in complete disbelief at the Naruto that she just witnessed. She had been thinking that he wouldn't have changed much, but she was wrong. He's so tall. And those arms. They look strong enough to break rocks. Kurinai exclaimed in her head, before suddenly, I want to eat off those abs. Her thoughts took a turn to the gutter, and she began blushing brightly at the memory of his abs. I want him, thought a brightly blushing Makoto. I want him bad. I want him to hold me in those arms. I want him to rub my body with those big hands, continued a still brightly blushing Makoto. I wonder if down there is big too. Hitomi's mind was completely blank as she was blushing up a storm, except for one thought, big. For you see, Hitomi used her Byakugan when Naruto was walking by and got glimpse of his so-called little friend. Only thing was, it wasn't so little. Come on. We all know that they would use it to check out people through their clothes. I want to rub those abs, thought Yugao. I want to rub them, lick them, and eat off of them. Yeah. Her mind's gone. Inside classroom. The classroom was filled with some light, but excited chatter. All the students were grouped together with their friends talking to each other. But one group had the attention of everyone else. This group was made up of all the clan heirs save for one people. Within this group, however, were 5 people who were known as the next generation of Ice Queens. Those people are known as Naruko Uzumaki, Yakumo Kurama, Hinata Hyuga, Satsuki Uchiha, and Kira Inuzuka. These 5 were inseparable ever since they were kids and all began training together. Naruko had changed over the years. She still had her straight, long red hair, only currently it wasn't in a ponytail, and instead was held in a braid over her shoulder. She had soft pink lips, violet eyes that held strength and kindness in them. She was wearing a bigger, sleeveless version of her old battle kimono, only now it hugged her now D-cup breasts. She wore black form-fitting pants with her dual pouch still on her right thigh and had black shinobi sandals. She earned the title of Red-Headed Ice Queen because of her beauty and always turning down dates. A new addition to her outfit was the katana that currently were tied to her hip. It was approximately 30 inches in length with the blade portion being approximately 23.5 inches long. The guard on the sword was bronze and in the shape of a dragon. The sheath had a dragon design as well. It has a red-colored sheath with a gold dragon. The grip is white with the actual wrapping around the handle being red. Hanging from the pommel tied with a string was a metal flower charm. However, it was not always like this and had in fact been just a small orb of metal until it was in Naruko's hands. That was when it changed into the sword it is now. That had always been a strange occurrence for Naruto and her mother. The sword had just one day arrived on their door, and with a note that read, "For the daughter to reforge the connection to the lost son." Until Naruto had actually grabbed the sword and it changed, they had been stumped on what the note meant. But now, they definitely knew who the lost son was and they would reconnect with him. They even planned that if he didn't have a teacher, they would teach him in order to spend time with him. As the class was talking about random things since most of it was civilians, the shinobi clan group were talking about the distinct possibility of a certain red-streaked blonde making an appearance. "So what do you guys think?" asked Choji Akimichi. Choji has a rotund build and swirl markings on his cheeks similar to the rest of his clan. He currently has a red suit with plates armor on his torso, arms and upper legs while having the kanji for food on the front, shoku, while also wearing stud earrings in his ears. "I doubt that loser will be here, if he is even still alive," came the arrogant voice of Sasuke Uchiha, older twin brother of Satsuki Uchiha. Sasuke has black hair with a blue tiny shaped like a duck's butt and black eyes. He is wearing dark blue pants, over which hangs a blue cloth that covers him from his stomach to his knees, which he secures with a gray rope and black shinobi sandals. Covering his torso is a gray zippered, high-collar, short-sleeved shirt with blue wrist warmers. "Shut up, Sasuke," came the reply from his twin sister, Satsuki Uchiha. Satsuki looks almost exactly like her brother with some differences. She has the same color hair and eyes, but her hair is styled in a ponytail with some hair sticking out in the front, and she has soft, pink lips. She was wearing a black battle kimono similar to Naruto's but was black with white trimmings instead. She has black ANBU pants on and black shinobi sandals, all of which do nothing to hide her impressive D-cup breasts or shapely rear. Like Naruto, she also has a sword. It is a black shakudo with no guard. "No one here wants to listen to you go on your little power trip," continued Satsuki, "and besides, Naruto and her mom still believe he is alive, so if there is a chance, don't crush people's hope with your superiority complex." Sasuke glared at Satsuki. "It is not a complex when you know that some nobody who ran away from their clan and was weak when they did is probably still weak," growled Sasuke arrogantly. "Whatever floats your boat," Satsuki said while rolling her. Before she then focused on her friend Hinata, who looked like she was holding out on something. "What's got you looking so nervous, Hinata? Don't you think we'll pass and that Naruto will show up?" Satsuki questioned, which quickly got all attention on her. Hinata Hyuga is the clan heiress for the Hyuga clan. She has dark blue hair cut in a Heim style reaching her lower back and shoulder-length strands framing her face. She has the traditional white eyes of the Hyuga clan with a lavender tinted to them. She wears a loose-fitting, lavender and cream hooded jacket with lavender cuffs over mesh armor that shows her well-developed G-cup breasts. She also wears navy blue pants and black, low-heeled sandals. Hinata, upon noticing all attention was on her, from her group, blushed red. "Well, I know Naruto is alive because he helped me out a few years ago and I saw him leave the V village then come back again during the past 6 years. Hinata said, thinking about the time they were kids and he protected her from the bullies, whilst only slightly stuttering. "What?" the group exclaimed somewhat quietly so as to not draw attention to themselves and leave the other conversations alone. "What do you mean he left the village and came back?" asked Kira Inuzuka and Ino Yamanaka at the same time. Kira Inuzuka was the clan heiress of the Inuzuka clan only because her sister didn't want to. She has the traditional wild Inuzuka look with wild hair and slit pupils and the traditional fang tattoos on each cheek. She has thick brown hair that goes down to her upper rear, enlarged canines that jut out slightly from underneath her lips. She wears a zipped-up, hooded, sleeveless tan coat with dark brown fur lining the hood that hugs her D-cup breasts. Black fingerless gloves that have dark brown fur also lining the wrist. Black shinobi sandals, and black, form-fitting short shorts with her ninja pouch behind her waist under her coat, and sitting next to her is her Nikken partner Akamaru, who is a big white-furred dog. For image of Kiba, look up Naruto Kiba gender band and look for the image that has a green background with white hearts, and says Kiba in a red heart, and Shino in a green heart, and that is the version I am using. Ino Yamanaka is the clan heiress of the Yamanaka clan. She has fair skin, light blue-green eyes, and platinum blonde hair that she wears in a ponytail that goes down to her waist and has bangs that cover the right half of her face with a red clip. She wears a short, sleeveless purple shirt that exposes her midriff and hugs her E-cup breasts. She wears a purple skirt and mesh armor on her thighs, elbows and knees, with black shinobi sandals and stud earrings. Just look up her regular Shippuden outfit along with everyone else with some minor changes due to timing. He left the village 3 years ago, and he came back last week, Hinata said. So that's what you meant, said Naruto, and you say he came back last week? Hinata nodded her head before suddenly blushing bright red. An regular Hinata level blush minus the fainting that will come later. Why are you blushing, Hinata? Asked Sakura. Sakura Haruno is the daughter of a civilian councilman, however, she, along with her mother, don't share her father's views on Naruto and her family. Sakura has fair skin, short pink hair held with a white ribbon, and emerald green eyes. She wears a red sleeveless red top with white seam that hugs against her E-cup bust. Black gloves, gray elbow protectors, low heel, knee-high boots, and black shorts that hug her impressive as underneath a short gray apron skirt. WL, stuttered Hinata. When I saw him coming back to the V village, W was wrapped in bandages. B but he looked so tall and muscular. Hinata stuttered all while looking like her head was about to burst from all of the blood being pumped to it. Seriously? Yakumo asked incredulously. I mean, I know it's been years since you saw him and most of us don't know him except for old pictures, but I don't think he could change that much, said Yakumo. Before anyone could reply, Irika Yumino walked in, and everyone quieted down. Well, it's nice to see I don't have to say anything to get you brats to shut up anymore, Irika said while having a teasing smile which made everyone lightly blush in embarrassment. Now, before we begin, I want to introduce a student who has been away for the past several years training and has come back today. Everyone began wondering and whispering with their neighbor on who this mysterious person was, until Irika raised his hand and everyone stopped and paid attention. Now I know you're all curious about who this person is, so I will just let him in now, alright? Said Irika, before he went to open the door. Once the door was opened, they all saw who it was, and the girls began blushing, and drooling with hearts in their eyes, while the guys all glared with jealousy about the red-streaked blonde that just walked in. He went to the front of the class and said with a calm smile, Hello, everyone. My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I am going to be graduating with all of you. Before anyone could react, Naruto was tackled into a hug by a certain redhead. It's you. It's really you, cried Naruto all while still hugging her older brother who now towered over her and the rest of the class. This scene of the red-headed Ice Queen, hugging and crying over a stranger, shocked everyone and caused all the guys to get even more jealous at the fact that she was displaying affection to person. Naruto for his part was surprised at this reaction before he suddenly looked confused. He started awkwardly. Who are you? He asked, curious of who this redhead was, and awkwardly because of the sudden display of affection. And remember, he was 7 when he left, and is now 16 and has not seen his sister since then. Naruto eeped before she hurriedly let go while blushing. This caused further shock at the redhead blushing and making such a cute sound. Naruto calmed herself and stood up straight while looking him in the eyes with a smile and said, It's me, Naruto. Your little sister. Naruto looked confused for a brief second, which made Naruto sad, before realization struck his features and he got a big, grinning smile on his face, one that made Naruto slightly worry, before giving her a big hug, lifting her off the ground. All while shouting, Little Tomato! All of you know that if Naruto had a little sister with red hair, he would do something stupid like that. This further shocked everyone because of 2 things. First, he called her Tomato, which no one can do without being sent to the hospital. And second, all Naruto did was blush before she began to lightly beat on his head with her cheeks puffed while shouting, Mao, I've told you before to not call me that. And think the reaction a chibi anime character gets when they puff their cheeks and begin flailing their arms. All Naruto did was laugh with while putting her down, so now she could only beat his chest because of the height difference, which she now realized feels very firm, and her face was now the same color as her hair. Everyone was slack-jawed at the interaction between the 2 siblings, all except for the group of clan heirs and heiresses and civilian councilwoman daughter. They looked on with smiles for their friend except for 2 people, but both for different reasons. Shino Aburame was being his normal, expressionless self, like all Aburame, which is why he isn't smiling but he is happy for his friend. Shino is like all Aburame and show no emotion. He has bushy brown hair, narrow eyes, and is the second tallest of his class now that Naruto has arrived. He wears dark sunglasses, a sea green jacket with a high upturned collar that hangs down to his knees, with a hood that obscures his face even more. And he has a satchel on his back. Sasuke, however, was instead sneering at Naruto for taking the attention of the girl who he believed belonged to him because she could give him strong children for the future. I know I am doing a lot of these author notes, but come on. We all know Sasuke's arrogant, emo-ass would think something like that. For those who want to read a story kinda like that, look up Lemon in the Same Household, by Dealt Shadow 35, or Naruto Master of Kunoichi, also by Dealt Shadow 35. Both are heavy in lemons for those who focus on that, but they both do show Naruto's family being hit on by Sasuke, who believes they should be with him. The guys of the group were slightly envious of his build. All of the girls, however, were blushing heavily and slightly drooling. Except for Kira who, just like her sister earlier, which she will find out later, was in pseudo heat and was currently lusting after Naruto at least until Akamaru smacked her out of it. Literally. He smacked her in the back of the head with his tail before she wound up like her sister. Only unlike her sister, she doesn't have the control to prevent herself from trying to jump his bones. She sent a thankful look at Akamaru, with a still heavy blush on her face, which he nodded back at her as if to say, no problem. Ino and Sakura were blushing heavily, with hearts in their eyes, about to go back to their fangirlish ways. However, before they did that, they raised their arms and smacked each other knowing that the other would do the same after they realized what was happening. They both rubbed their heads before looking at each other and nodding to the other in thanks for snapping the other out of it. Yakumo and Hinata were both standing silent, with their faces looking as if they were about to burst into fire. They both looked at each other and knew that the other was on the verge of fainting, but they ended up fainting before they could pinch each other to stop themselves from fainting. Iruka, having enough of the meet and greet, tried to get everyone to settle down. Alright everyone, please settle down so we can begin. His calm voice was overruled by everyone still talking about Naruto, how hot he is, fangirls, or what his workout is to get that kind of body so they can get ladies as well, hopeless guys. I said settle down. The legendary Big Head no Jutsu was infamous for being able to quiet down even the noisiest of students. It worked its magic as the entire classroom had anticlimactically went silent much to Iruka's pleasure. He looked over at Naruto who was still standing and didn't even look fazed by the Big Head no Jutsu, which surprised him. Alright Naruto, now can you please take a seat over there, Iruka said while pointing at the empty seat in between Ino and Naruto. Once you've done that we can begin the written test. Naruto calmly nodded his head before walking over to the seat and sat down. He looked over at Naruto and gave her an encouraging smile that said good luck, while nodding his head before doing the same to Ino. Both of whom began to blush brightly, while all of the other girls in the class looked on with jealousy. Once Naruto was seated and everyone was quiet, Iruka passed out the papers with his assistant Mizuki, who had been glaring at Naruto ever since he walked into the classroom. So, you've returned demon, thought Mizuki with disgust and malice. Now I can put my plan into action using you as the scapegoat, and get the power I was promised from Orochimaru-sama for bringing him the Forbidden Scroll. Once the test was passed out, the students were told they have half an hour to complete the test. Naruto was the first to complete the test in 5 minutes and relaxed in his seat while waiting for the time to pass. Once everyone was done, Iruka and Mizuki collected the tests and headed outside for the last 3 parts of the exam. Once they made it outside, the adults, who were waiting for the students to come outside, all began silently watching the students, while mentally cheering for their respective children or student and hoping that the demon will fail. Alright, said Iruka, the next part is shuriken and kunai throwing. To pass you need a total of 11 points minimum. Each shuriken and kunai that hits the target is a point and there is a way to get extra points but I'll let you figure that part out. Iruka explained. Once that was done he began to call everyone up, one by one to get their 10 shuriken and then their 10 kunai. Once that was done, they all began to throw the shuriken and kunai at the targets, and Iruka recorded their scores. Shino Aburaim. Shuriken, 6 out of 10, kunai, 8 out of 10. Total score, 14 out of 20. Choji Akimichi. Shuriken, 7 out of 10, kunai, 8 out of 10. Total score, 15 to 20. Shikamaru Nara. Shuriken, 5 out of 10, kunai, 6 out of 10. Total score 11 out of 20. Ino Yamanaka. Shuriken, 6 out of 10, kunai, 7 out of 10. Total score 13 out of 20. Sakura Haruno. Shuriken, 7 out of 10, kunai, 6 out of 10. Total score 13 out of 20. Yakumo Kurama sad face plus 2 points. Shuriken, 5 out of 10, kunai, 5 out of 10. Total score 10 20ths plus 2 points equals 12 20ths. Kira Inuzuka sad face plus 1 point. Shuriken, 7 out of 10, kunai, 5 out of 10. Total score 12 20ths plus 1 point equals 13 20ths. Hinata Hyuga sad face plus 1 point. Shuriken, 8 out of 10, kunai, 8 out of 10. Total score 16 20ths plus 1 point equals 17 20ths. Naruko Uzumaki sad face plus 2 points. Shuriken, 9 out of 10, kunai, 8 out of 10. Total score 17/20 plus 2 points equals 19/20. Satsuki Uchiha sad face plus 2 points. Shuriken, 8 out of 10, kunai 9 out of 10. Total score, 17/20 plus 2 points equals 19/20. Sasuke Uchiha sad face plus 2 points. Shuriken, 9 out of 10, kunai 10 out of 10. Total score, 19/20 plus 2 points equals 21/20. Once Sasuke was told his score, he looked right at Naruto with a condescending look and said, beat that loser. Naruto calmly waited with his arms crossed and only glanced at Sasuke before looking at the targets again. This was something that pissed off Sasuke because he was trying to see if could rile up Naruto in order to make him mess up, but instead, his attempts were brushed off, as if they were nothing. Alright, Naruto Uzumaki, it's your turn. Iruka called, making Naruto calmly walk over, before taking the shuriken and kunai from Mizuki. Naruto got into a stance ready to throw them. Before he threw them, however, he noticed they were blunted. Iruka-sensei, these are blunted, calmly stated Naruto, which surprised Iruka before he walked over and inspected them. Finding that Naruto was right and that they were blunted, which would make it impossible to stick to the target. Sorry about that, Naruto, apologized Iruka. Give me those and I will lend you some of mine, Iruka offered. However, he and everyone watching was surprised when Naruto shook head and said, no, it's fine. I just wanted to let you know. Alright, then if that's all, you can take your turn, Iruka said. Everyone watched as Naruto took his stance again. Naruto stood with his left foot forward, right foot back and knees bent. He had his right arm back with his hand bent in, and his left arm curved in front of him. In his right hand were all of the shuriken, and in his left hand were 9 of the kunai, and the last was in his mouth. Everyone watched as Naruto suddenly flung his left arm back and right arm forward while at the same time throwing the shuriken. Even after he let the shuriken go, he didn't stop moving as he began to flip and jump all in place, all while still spinning. Everyone watched as he continued to let the kunai fly, and then he back-flipped and let the last kunai go flying. Once he landed, everyone looked at the training dummies and saw that not all of the shuriken and kunai struck the targets, but were buried halfway deep in the dummies. At first, everything was silent before all of the civilian parents, students, and Sasuke started laughing at Naruto, but the only ones who stayed silent were the ones with shinobi training in the crowd and Sakura, because they knew from either experience or reading Sakura that all the spots that Naruto hits were either instant kill or fatal wounds that would kill you within seconds or minutes without medical aid. Iruka looked at all of the students laughing, and then, "Shut up!" Iruka shouted, using the big head no jutsu, as he was getting fed up with these civilians laughing when they didn't even hear the score. After everyone stopped laughing, and paid attention to Iruka, who still looked pissed that everyone was laughing when he hadn't even said the score yet. Iruka finally calmed down, and looked at Naruto with a calm yet proud smile. Well, Naruto, began Iruka, I have to say that was by far the most amazing display of agility I have seen in a while. Thank you, said Naruto while nodding his head. Now, before I give you your score, I have to ask, said Iruka, walking over to the training dummies that still had shuriken and kunai embedded in them. Why did you throw all of the shuriken and kunai in these areas? Asked Iruka, generally curious on what Naruto's answer will be. Before Naruto could answer though, Sasuke arrogantly said, probably because he doesn't know what a target is and threw them at random. This caused a look of disappointment to cross Mikoto's face, who was watching from the crowd, at her son's stupidity, and embarrassment to cross Satsuki's face at being related to such a damn dumbass. Actually, Sasuke, began Naruto, I threw them in those specific spots because every single one would have either been an instant kill upon impact, or a fatal wound that would cause death either within seconds or minutes, calmly stated Naruto, who then looked at Sasuke with a disappointed look on his face and said, and the fact that you don't know that must mean you have done a piss-poor job at studying the human body for impact points that inflict the most damage. This caused everyone to look at Naruto in shock that he knew something and Sasuke didn't. Before anyone could say anything else, Iruka clapped his hands to gather everyone's attention again. Alright everyone, now that that is done, we can now move on to the taijutsu segment of the exam before we finish with the jutsu section, Iruka said, as everyone began walking towards the open grounds, before Naruto remembered something. Hey, Iruka-sensei, what was Naruto's score? Naruto asked, curious on what her brother's score was, which now had everyone wondering what his total was. Iruka for his part began sheepishly laughing while rubbing the back of his neck. Oh right. How silly of me. I forgot to put it up after all of that drama. Naruto Uzumaki sad face plus 20 points. Shuriken, 10 out of 10. Kunai, 10 out of 10. Total score, 20/20 plus 20 points equals 40/20. When everyone saw that score, they went slack-jawed and never having seen such a score before. Everyone started staring at Naruto, who was still walking to the open training grounds when he felt people staring at him. He turned around to see everyone staring at him with dropped jaws, before he shrugged his shoulders and simply said, "What?" That snapped everyone out of it before they began moving to the training grounds for their taijutsu tests. Once everyone was there, Iruka explained how he would call a student. They will then stand across from Mizuki and get ready to fight. Once Iruka starts the fight, they will continue for either 5 minutes or until Mizuki is taken down. After the rules were explained, Mizuki went to his spot and waited for everyone to be called. As everyone was called up, they began their fights. The civilian students barely passed the 5 mark, whereas the clan heirs and heiresses, along with Sakura, were able to knock down Mizuki. Then before anyone knew it, the only ones left were the Uchiha twins and the 2 Uzumaki children. "Alright, next is Satsuki Uchiha," stated Iruka. Satsuki nodded and moved to stand across from Mizuki before she got into her clan's signature, Interceptor Fist, Taijutsu stance. Mizuki got ready as well, and when Iruka gave the signal, Mizuki charged at Satsuki, while Satsuki waited. Once Mizuki was within range, he launched a right hook at Satsuki, which she blocked with her left arm, and launched her right fist forward and landed a hit on his torso, which sent Mizuki back a foot before she advanced and launched kick to his head that he blocked but was a distraction for another kick to his stomach, which knocked him down to the ground, and she pinned him. "Alright Satsuki, well done," congratulated Iruka. "Your timing was perfect in waiting for Mizuki to make the opening move, which is beneficial to your clan's style, which requires patience and timing before blocking or dodging and counter-attacking," Iruka explained, which Satsuki listened to closely and then bowed while saying, "Thank you," and then she walked back over to the other students and sat down next to Naruto before sending her a look that said, "Beat that." Naruto saw the look and bristled before waiting patiently and anxiously for her turn. "Next is Naruto Uzumaki," said Iruka. Naruto got up and walked over to stand across from Mizuki, before she got in her stance, which had her standing with her left foot forward, right leg back, knees slightly bent, left arm crossed forward with her left elbow pointing in Mizuki's direction and her left hand open as if to perform a chop, and her right arm at her hip and her right hand closed into a fist. Once Iruka started the fight, she charged at Mizuki and launched a left roundhouse at his head, which he blocked using both arms but was not ready for her right leg that came up when she performed a backflip kick that landed on his chin as he was knocked down. She then proceeded to pin his arms behind his back with her knee before grabbing his chin and the crown of his head with her hands, effectively preventing any movement. "Alright Naruto, excellent job," Iruka said, signaling Naruto to stand back up after letting go of Mizuki and look at Iruka. "That was a very good job of taking your opponent's attention away and having it focus on a specific movement before using another move to take down your opponent. And the way you pinned him was one of the most effective pins, as it takes away the use of your opponent's arms and gives you the chance to easily snap his neck, which takes away any thoughts of attempting to escape." "Thank you, Iruka-sensei," said Naruto, before she walked back to the students and looked at Satsuki with a smug look that made Satsuki bristle this time. "Alright, Sasuke Uchiha, you're up." Sasuke simply humphed before moving into position, also standing in his clan's taijutsu stance. Iruka started the match and Sasuke charged at Mizuki, who launched a kick at Sasuke's head but that was blocked, and Sasuke then sent several punches towards Mizuki's torso, before tripping him and pinning him. "Alright Sasuke, that's enough," said Iruka, causing Sasuke to look at him and then get up. "That was an excellent way of turning your family's Interceptor Fist into an offensive fighting style, but that was far too much aggression that was used in your advance. Try to control that temper of yours," Iruka explained, causing Sasuke to sneer at him before walking back to the other students, ignoring everyone while glaring at Naruto. He was still upset that he didn't react to his tauntings earlier. "And finally, Naruto Uzumaki," said Iruka with a calm smile. Naruto simply nodded and stood up before making his way over across from Mizuki, who began glaring at him. Naruto boredly looked at Mizuki, which pissed him off, before taking out a red headband with black flames and tying it around his eyes, shocking everyone, before calmly crossing his arms across his chest, which made them look bigger. This made Sasuke and Mizuki believe he has given up, but confused Iruka. Naruto, aren't you going to get ready?" Iruka asked, completely confused on Naruto's actions, as well as everyone else except for Mizuki, Sasuke, and the civilian villagers, who all believed he had given up and was going to simply stand there and take his beating like the demon he is. "I am ready," answered Naruto calmly. "I simply have no need to use my eyes for this fight because he won't land a finger me," Naruto said, while pointing at Mizuki, causing everyone to think he was either that confident or that arrogant in his abilities, but caused Mizuki to get pissed off. Okay? Iruka replied slowly, still a little unsure if Naruto was that strong, but he wasn't here to question the boy, so he simply started the match. So, you really think I won't be able to land a finger on you, huh? Sneered Mizuki, thinking that the demon should have just died somewhere in a hole and never returned. I don't think you won't land a finger on me, I know you won't. Calmly replied Naruto, not moving an inch. Oh yeah. Well, we'll see about that. Mizuki shouted before charging at Naruto, who continued to stand there. Once Mizuki was in range, he launched a kick towards Naruto's head. Mizuki began thinking that he hit him when the kick was only an inch away, until suddenly, he was staring at the sky. Mizuki was confused on what just happened, while everyone else was as well. All they saw was Mizuki about to kick Naruto in the head, and then suddenly he's on the floor laying on his back. The only one who wasn't confused was Kushina, because she knew what had happened and had wide eyes, which was not missed by the rest of her group. Kushina, what just happened? Questioned Hitomi, as she had caught part of what happened, but all she really saw was a blur of movement before the scene before them appeared. The group of adults looked at Kushina, who looked on with mixture of surprise, pride, and curiosity, as Naruto continued to stand in the same place in the same position, while Mizuki slowly began to get up from the floor behind him, where he was previously lying down. What happened was that Naruto made his move, Kushina said, which confused the group as they hadn't seen him move from his spot. But he's still in the same spot, so how could he have made his move? Asked a confused Sam, who recently returned with Hana after they changed and got a hold of themselves. Kushina shook her head at them with a proud smile and explained, it's not that he didn't move, it's just that he moved so fast that to everyone watching, it looked like Mizuki just suddenly appeared on the floor. Kushina explained, being the only one to be able to move that fast other than Naruto himself, making the group's eyes widen at that. Flashback to moments ago. Sensing Mizuki's foot about to hit him, Naruto smoothly raised his arm, grabbed Mizuki's ankle and flipped him over his shoulder to the ground without moving from his spot. Flashback end. How is he able to move that fast though? Sam asked the question that was on all of their minds. Kushina then looked deep in thought while still looking at Naruto, who still had not moved from his spot or changed his stance. The only way I know of to get that fast is to go through years of intense gravity training, but even then, it's not something that a regular teenager can attempt with being destroyed by the training. Kushina said, momentarily forgetting that Naruto was not a regular teenager. What about the fox? Hitomi asked / reminded the group, who all then went wide-eyed at that information. Sam was the first to react, you're right. With the fox being sealed inside of him, giving him its regenerative properties, and his crazy stamina, he would be able to adjust to any training given within in a few hours and at most a few days. Sam said, realizing that Naruto would be able to withstand the great amounts of pressure and weight needed to get the training done and still be alive and well. Back with Naruto. Naruto still stood in his spot waiting for Mizuki to get up and try to attack him again. Mizuki got up and glared at Naruto for the embarrassment he is going through. What did you do? Shouted Mizuki, wondering what Naruto did so he could get his power, with Sasuke listening closely, wondering the same thing for the same reason. Answering calmly, Naruto said, I just moved and flipped you over my shoulder when you attacked and were within my range. Mizuki got mad thinking Naruto was making fun of him, and shouted, lies. You never moved. Of course I did, Naruto calmly replied, I just moved so fast that you didn't register what happened. I can move slower if you want so that Iruka can see that I am using taijutsu and so that you can't complain that I am cheating. This pissed off Mizuki thinking that Naruto was making fun of him, and this caused him to start attacking at a random and wild pace. All the while, everyone saw that Naruto was only dodging and redirecting the attacks, which surprised everyone at the level of skill that he was using. While this was going on, the rest of the group, that will later be known as the Rookie 12, were watching with amazed expressions, except for Shino, for obvious reasons, and Sasuke, who was glaring at Naruto while trying to memorize his moves and techniques, but they were too random and erratic to be copied. Naruto, who had finally had enough, decided to end the fight in the easiest way possible for him that would still provide power. Naruto reared his right hand over his left shoulder and backhanded Mizuki across the grounds and straight into the wall of the academy, where only the bottom half of Mizuki could be seen with the random twitching of his legs, showing that he was knocked out. The adults and shinobi stared in amazement and shock at the level of strength needed to accomplish such a feat. The students were looking on with the same reactions, with Sasuke looking on in jealousy at the strength and power that Naruto had. Holy shit! He just gave Mizuki the godly bitch slap! One of the male students exclaimed in shock. After this little display of power, Mizuki was removed from the wall and sent to the hospital where he would be healed and returned in an hour, so the students were given this hour as a chance to take a break and talk with each other, with their family coming over to talk as well. The group of the future Rookie 12 all went and talked with their family except for Sasuke, who went and brooded by a tree. As Naruto was talking with his sister, he was unaware of a group of people who were coming up to the both of them. "Hello again, Sochi," said a voice behind Naruto that caused him to go wide-eyed and slowly look behind him to see his mother staring back at him with a loving smile and nothing but love and pride in her eyes. "Hello again, Ka-san," replied Naruto, still staring at her in shock at how she was looking at him. "How have you been, Sochi?" Kushina asked, wanting to know how her son has been the past several years, along with everyone else. "I've been good," Naruto said with a smile, having snapped out of his shock. "What have you been up to for all these years, Naruto-kun?" Mikoto asked, wondering what he has done over the years along with the rest of the group and their children. "Well, I've just been training and living in the Forest of Death, where I got a bunch of pets, and I actually came back to the village on 2 occasions," Naruto said, making everyone look at him, wondering when he did and why. "When did you come back, Naruto-kun?" asked Sim, which got Naruto to smirk at her, which made all of them to blush at how handsome he looked before he looked at Mikoto and Hitomi. "Well, haven't you ever wondered how Aunt Mikoto is a survivor or how Hitomi survived her illness?" Naruto asked, which got everyone to look at him in surprise. "Wait," said Mikoto and Hitomi, "you're the reason why we're still alive." "Yeah," Naruto started to explain, "I was in the village, planning on getting some minor revenge on the Yondaime by spraying itching powder in his office through the vents, when I heard him along with those old advisors summon Itachi. I was curious about what was going on, so I decided to sit still and listen in on what was going on. As I was listening, I heard them ask Itachi how the issue with the Uchiha clan was going. When he said that the issue had gotten worse, the advisors told him that since it didn't get better, to simply eliminate them." Mikoto was horrified at what she heard. Then Naruto continued his tale. "When I heard this, I was so shocked that they would even suggest something like this. Even Itachi looked shocked before he looked at the Yondaime with a little hope in his eyes that he wouldn't go through with the order. But the Yondaime proved him wrong when he approved of the order instead. Itachi tried to bargain for the lives of the children and your life, Mikoto. But the Yondaime said that only Sasuke and Satsuki would be allowed to live. I heard that and remembered the times that you helped me out with some food, so I got out of there as quickly as possible without making noise and rushed over to the Uchiha compound. But when I got there, everyone was already dead. I then sensed Itachi and you in the main house, so turned off my gravity seals that I had on at the time and rushed over just in time to save you, but because I couldn't control my speed at the time, I dropped you off at one of the training ground in your compound and then rushed back to the forest." Naruto finished, getting a surprised and grateful look from Mikoto, who smiled at him, which he replied back to with a smile of his own. Once he had finished, everyone, other than Mikoto, looked at him in shock before he then looked over at Hitomi and began the next tale. "The second time I came back to village, I had actually been traveling kinda close to the Hyuga compound, when I overheard one of those pompous windbags your clan call elders talking about how you've been a threat to their ways and how after tonight the poison would take effect and make it seem like your heart had simply stopped in your sleep." Hitomi was shocked at hearing how the clan elders of her clan would try and plan this. Hearing this, I snuck into your clan compound, into the elders' rooms, looking for what the poison was, when I found that it was a plant that makes your body grow weaker when continuously taken in small amounts over the years. I then went back to the forest and gathered all of the plants I knew that when taken by themselves did nothing, but when mixed together they become an amazing medicine that can expel almost any abnormal effects within your body. Naruto finished his tale, getting amazed looks from everyone at his level of plant knowledge. "Hey Naruto?" asked Hana with Kira standing next to her. Naruto turned to her, showing she now had his attention, which caused the reaction of her and her sister blushing at the calm look in his eyes that showed hidden strength. "Yes?" Naruto said, while tilting his head to the side, which got the group to twitch and mentally shout, "Kawaii." "How did you know what plants were poisonous and when mixed, create a strong medicine instead of a stronger poison?" Hana asked. Naruto then looked sheepish before saying, "Well, I knew they were poisonous because when I started living in the forest, I was looking for food and couldn't find any." This got the group to look at him with sadness for what he went through, with looks of guilt crossing over Naruto's and Kushina's faces for not doing more for him. Naruto saw these looks and felt bad because he knew his mom and sister weren't to blame for how Minato treated him. Naruto then felt worse realizing the effect what he was about to say next would have on them, so I just began eating a group of random plants near me, which about a minute later, I fell to the ground seizing up until I passed out. I then woke up the next day alive and well and figured that Kurami cured my body of the poison. Naruto continued, but before he could continue, Satsuki had caught something when he spoke and decided to ask the question on her mind. However, before she could, Irika came back and asked all students to come back for the jutsu portion of the exam. Hearing this, the students went back to the field where they all began performing the academy jutsu. Finally, when it was Naruto's turn, he performed the kawarimi and the henge perfectly before surprising everyone when he performed the shadow clone jutsu and made 3 solid clones instead of the regular clone, thus allowing him to pass as well. Later, the group of women and Naruto had gone to Kushina's house in order to celebrate for successfully becoming shinobi of the village. However, before they all went in, they noticed that Naruto had stopped before the gate entrance. The whole group was wondering why he stopped, when Kushina walked up to him and told him, "It's okay, Naruto. You can come in. You can come home." Hearing those words, the group then realized why he had stopped. He was afraid of being rejected again and didn't want to risk the chance that he could have a family again. As for Naruto, he began tearing up when he heard those words and then lunged forward and gave his mom a hug while saying, "I'm home, Ka-san." Kushina then smiled, while also crying and said, "Welcome home, Sochi-kun." The group all began to have tears in their eyes as well, watching as Naruto had finally reconnected with his mother. Before they could all head in, however, Naruto suddenly tensed and turned in the direction of the forest with a serious face. This was not missed by the rest as they were wondering why he was looking in that direction, when suddenly, Naruto began jumping in that direction. Everyone was surprised by his actions and began jumping after him, but they were surprised to see that when they jumped onto a roof, Naruto had already entered the forest, which surprised them all as to how fast he was. They snapped out of it when, a few minutes later, they suddenly felt a huge wave of power come from the forest, and then a loud boom with an explosion causing smoke to go high up into the air. Worried for her son, Kushina then began rushing to the forest at her top speed, which snapped everyone else out of their shock and decided to follow. With every one of them thinking, "I hope Naruto's okay." When they all got there, they were surprised to find an enormous crater, with Naruto holding the village's forbidden scroll of seals upright in his left hand, a giant shuriken with a broken point stabbed into a tree, and Mizuki kneeling on the ground away from Naruto, clutching his right shoulder because of the missing arm that was laying on the ground away from Mizuki and was bent at all sorts of angles, showing that it would have been broken beyond repair and immensely painful if it was still attached. But another surprise was when they looked at Naruto. He had what looked like gold covering his arms from the tip of his fingers all the way to his shoulders with markings all over his arms, and a fierce, angry look on his face. Then they heard him growl, "I'm going to make you pay for what you did to Irika-sensei and what you said about my family." They then began wondering what had happened before they arrived. 5 minutes before the group arrived, Naruto had sensed Mizuki's chakra moving rapidly from the Hokage tower, and was confused before he then sensed Irika's chakra meeting Mizuki's before they started pulsing as if they were fighting, when Irika's suddenly began to drop. This had alarmed him, and he decided to see what happened, so he moved at high speeds across the village into the forest and found Irika. He was shocked to see Irika laying on the ground in a small puddle of blood, with a giant shuriken sticking out of his back. Naruto rushed over and checked to see if he was still alive and was relieved that he was. Naruto removed the shuriken from Irika's back and then used a minor healing jutsu to stop the bleeding. With Irika out of danger, Naruto turned in the direction of Mizuki and disappeared, where he then reappeared in front of Mizuki and saw him holding Konoha's forbidden scroll of seals with a giant shuriken on his back, similar to the one used on Irika. Mizuki was surprised to see Naruto appear in front of him so suddenly, but then, what luck! I get to steal the village scroll and kill the demon brat, Mizuki thought with malice. He then pulled the other shuriken from his back and got ready to throw it. He then shouted, "Die, demon!" and let loose the shuriken towards Naruto. He believed that the injuries he received earlier from Naruto were a bunch of flukes. However, Naruto surprised him when he simply backhanded the shuriken with his bare fist, causing a point to break and the shuriken to go spinning wildly before lodging itself in a tree. "So my suspicion of you was right, you were planning something," said Naruto calmly. "To think you would attempt to steal the village's forbidden scroll and attempt to murder Irika-sensei." "What?" shouted Mizuki. "What do you mean, demon? You mean to say Irika is still alive?" "Is that not what I just said?" Naruto asked rhetorically. "Man, who knew you were evil and stupid?" This made Mizuki mad, so he decided to try and enlighten Naruto to a little secret the village had hidden from him. "Hey, did you ever wonder why the villagers hate you?" asked Mizuki, which caused Naruto to raise an eyebrow in curiosity. Seeing this, Mizuki continued, "You see, 16 years ago, the Kyuubi no Yoko had attacked the village. The village did its best to fight off the Kyuubi, but we couldn't kill, so the Yondaime decided to seal it up in 2 children. Don't you see, he decided to seal it up in you and your demon whore of a sister." Mizuki saw Naruto had lowered his head and that his eyes were now shadowed. Thinking that he had an opening, Mizuki took a kunai out and began charging at Naruto in order to stab him in the head. However, when he was halfway there, He sensed a large amount of chakra suddenly coming from above him and looked up to see Naruto with a face of rage, his arms covered in gold from his shoulders to his fingers with markings all over them, and his right arm cocked back to launch an attack. Naruto then launched his arm forward to strike Mizuki. This caused a massive explosion to occur, and when the smoke cleared, it revealed a massive crater in the ground with Mizuki kneeling and clutching his shoulder because he was missing his right arm, which was several meters away and bent in all sorts of angles, showing that it was used to try and block the attack but was completely shattered and severed by the tremendous force from the punch. It then showed Naruto, who was standing while holding the scroll with his left hand and his still clenched right fist, with both still covered in gold. This was what the group saw when they showed up and heard what Naruto said. They then saw Naruto look over at them with a fierce but calm look on his face, which made him look even more handsome and caused them all to blush. They snapped out of it when they saw Naruto toss the scroll towards them, which was caught by Naruto. They then heard Naruto speak, "Hold that until the ANBU show up while I deal with this traitor." They then saw Naruto turn back to Mizuki before he stepped forward and suddenly disappeared from view. Everyone in the clearing began looking for him, the women in curiosity and Mizuki in fear, before they heard a large boom and felt a shockwave and turned to see Naruto had just uppercut Mizuki with enough force to cause a shockwave of air before Mizuki was launched into the air. Naruto watched Mizuki for a second, before he then stepped forward again with his right foot forward and bent his leg before jumping after Mizuki with so much force, the ground shattered and sent another shockwave. He then appeared above Mizuki with his ready to launch a kick but was covered in what looked like a black metallic material. Then they saw Naruto loose his kick with a shout of, "Savage Blade Kick." Once Naruto's kick made contact with Mizuki's body, there was a big flash of black energy with a red outline that caused everyone to shield their eyes from the big blast of wind that suddenly blasted through when Mizuki made contact with the ground, also causing the ground to crater even more. The dust began to settle, allowing the group to see that Mizuki had been blown deep into the ground and was actually severed in half at the waist. They heard multiple people landing in the clearing and turned around to reveal Minato, several ANBU, and what looked like a young woman with red hair and slitted eyes. The ANBU and Minato all looked surprised at the damage, and the woman appeared to be very proud for some reason. Before anyone could say anything, they then heard a loud crash and turned to see that it was Naruto who had landed and was currently crouched with his eyes shadowed before he stood, with his arms at his sides and slightly back with his left hand slightly clenched and his right hand in a complete fist. And his mouth open to allow steam to be leaking from the corners of his mouth, and his eyes were revealed and they showed massive amounts of power and strength in them. To all of the men, they were envious of how badass Naruto looked, and to the women, they were all blushing up a storm and feeling slightly wet, very in the cases of Anko, Hana, Tsum, and Kira, at how powerful and handsome he looked. He then relaxed his stance and breathed deeply before releasing it to finally calm down and turn towards the current audience. Before anyone could say anything, however, the young woman with red slitted eyes glommed Naruto while shouting his name, and then shocked everyone when she kissed him on the lips while wrapping her arms around his neck, and they saw him returning it while wrapping his arms around her waist. Naruto, who was feeling immensely jealous of the girl, along with all of the other women present, stepped forward and shouted, "Hey! Who are you and why are you kissing my brother?" The young woman broke the kiss and let go of Naruto as he did the same, and she turned around and looked at the group before answering, "Why, I'm his mate, of course, so why wouldn't I be allowed to kiss him?" she asked rhetorically. Minato then stepped forward and said, "What is your name?" The young woman sneered at him before saying, Well, if it isn't the garbage yandere. I haven't seen you in since you sealed me away." This received looks of surprise before Minato shouted, "Who are you and how do you me?" The young woman simply chuckled before replying, "I know you because you sealed me away 16 years ago, and as for who I am," once she said that, the young woman was then covered in a puff of smoke that cleared and revealed the woman still standing there but with fox ears on top of her head and nine tails swishing behind her body, all covered in reddish-orange fur with black fur tips. "My name is Kurami, the Kyuubi no Yoko. And mate to Naruto Uzumaki, one of the Yonkou 4 emperors, and reincarnation of the god of wrath, Ashura, and reincarnation of Ashura, one of the 2 sons of the Sage of 6 Paths." The group was wide-eyed at hearing that this was the Kyuubi and that she was the mate of Naruto, who, even though they didn't understand what one of those titles mean, they understood too. Naruto was the reincarnation of one of the sons of the Sage of 6 Paths and of a god of wrath. Nobody knew what to do now, but one thing was for certain. They would never get on Naruto's bad side. It has been 3 days since the reveal of Kurami being the Kyuubi no Yoko, at the same time as her being Naruto's mate, with him being the reincarnation of a god of wrath and of a son of the Sage of 6 Paths. Everyone was surprised at Naruto, of all people, being something so important, especially when they were finally told that Yonkou means 4 emperors. The group who took Kushina's side, which were a good portion of the female shinobi force, and the clan heads with their clans, were all amazed at how much of an important figure Naruto became. The civilian council, Minato, and the advisors all didn't care about him, only that his prestige could be used, and when they are done with him, they would have him sealed away. Currently, Naruto can be seen training in the Uzumaki training grounds, working on controlling his strength and speed by wearing gravity seal, enhanced weights that spread the weight all over the body instead of just weighing down the limb. He currently was wearing the equivalent to 120 tons at 30 times Earth's gravity, and he was currently trying to get used to moving right now as he was kinda doing a walking crouch around the training ground and was breaking a heavy sweat as the farthest he'd gone was 100 tons at 25 times Earth's gravity. And basically how Goku walks whenever he uses a new gravity setting in the gravity room. Off to the side, watching Naruto were Kushina, Naruto, Kurami, and Anko, who were all wearing blushes on their faces except Kurami, who had a look of lust that matched Anko's. The reason being that Naruto was doing all of these exercises shirtless, so the four women could all clearly see his toned, rock-hard abs, chest, back, and arms as he moved. They watched as slowly moved around the grounds and were still surprised to see him moving at all with the amount of weight he has added to himself, which would have crushed any normal person from the amount of force needed to even move a few steps. The fact Naruto was moving so much while only sweating heavily was astounding to Kushina, Naruto, and Anko. When Naruto was at least able to stand up all the way, he began to do actual workouts like sit-ups, push-ups, and the like, until he was a little more accustomed. Then he would begin to practice his katas and movement to increase his speed. As Naruto was doing his push-ups, Naruto decided to ask something that had been on her mind for a while. So, began Naruto, gaining the attention of the other women, how did you get out of the seal exactly? This got the attention of Kushina and Anko, who finally looked away from Naruto who had moved on to sit-ups, as they were interested in finding out how that happened as well. Kurami glanced at them before returning to watching Naruto do his workouts before saying, I got out of the seal by mixing my chakra with his. This let me be out physically, but most of my power is still inside of him. Kurami then shows a mark that looks like a fox surrounded by a ring of flaming chains. This mark is basically proof that while I am out here, my power is still locked and can only be regulated by Naruto. The trio nodded their heads when Kushina asked, how do you mix your chakra with his? Through physical contact, I was able to mix our chakras, which confused the seal just enough for me to create this body to be out here. The only thing I needed to do was leave a large portion of my power so that the seal would still think I'm there. Kurami explained. Kushina and Naruto understood this and both nodded their heads. Anko, however, asked something that the previous two missed. So, what did you do for physical contact? This caused the grounds to be silent except for the sounds of Naruto counting his reps. Kushina and Naruto turned to Kurami, who had a light blush as she continued watching Naruto, trying to ignore the looks she was receiving. She glanced at them and sighed before turning to them. Well, it wasn't a kiss or anything sexual if that's what you two are thinking, she replied, while motioning to Kushina and Naruto, who both went beet red at being caught thinking that was the case. Kurami then turned back to Naruto and said, I marked him as my mate, which requires me to bite his neck when he was 10 years old. At hearing this, Naruto and Kushina both felt jealous because they realized something. Kurami has spent more time teaching and being there for Naruto than either of them. Naruto didn't like this because she wanted her brother to herself and didn't like Kurami coming and trying to steal him away from her. Kushina didn't like this because that would mean that Naruto has been alone with Kurami for several years and had her there to teach him and help him than she has as his mother. Kurami could tell what they were feeling and said, you guys shouldn't be feeling like that, it's not your fault you couldn't be there for him. This got the mother-daughter duo to look in shock at what Kurami said, expecting her to accuse them of being terrible family members. He is here because he wants to be with you guys and spend time to get to know you and for you to do the same. The duo were wide-eyed and began thinking about this, and realized she was right. They then heard a loud thud and turned to see Naruto was panting heavily with a puddle of sweat around him. They checked the clock and were surprised that they had been talking for almost 2 hours and all that time Naruto had been training. Then they heard a loud rumbling noise and were wondering where it came from until they heard Naruto moaning childishly, I'm hungry. Hearing the four women giggled at his antics, then Kushina said, go shower Naruto-kun, while I start lunch. Okay, Ka-san. Naruto relied before getting up and moving a little easier, which surprised the three kunoichi, not expecting Naruto to move as easily so quickly. Kurami wasn't surprised by this as she had seen Naruto get used to heavy weights and high amounts of gravity quickly before. As Naruto was getting up, the four women suddenly saw a tattoo on his back. It was a black cross made of bones with a grinning face on it that had a white, crescent-shaped mustache on it. Kurami knew what it was because she had seen Naruto's back before. The other three didn't, however, as they had never seen Naruto shirtless before. An ace's tattoo of Whitebeard's Jolly Roger but black instead of purple. Kushina, however, being the mother she is, asked, Naruto, when did you get a tattoo and what does it mean? However, she began to get the feeling that she shouldn't have asked when Naruto suddenly froze and tensed up before he began to grip his fists so hard that they began bleeding from the palm. When Naruto turned around, the four women got terrified when they saw the look on his face was one of pure, unadulterated rage and the right half of his face was shadowed. This caused them to be even more scared when they saw his right eye began to shine pure white and forming behind, they saw what looked like a pitch-black demon that had glowing white eyes, a glowing red mouth that had razor-sharp teeth, claws for nails, and silver-gray markings all around its body. However, this didn't compare to the amount of killing intent he was releasing, as it was so much that the entire village felt it, causing the ANBU and all of the clan heads to mobilize around the source to find Naruto was the cause. In Azura's berserker mode from Azura's wrath is Naruto's shadow. Naruto saw the looks of fear on everyone, as well as them tending for a fight. He closed his eyes to begin calming down by taking deep breaths. As he calmed down, the image in the shadow began to fade away and Naruto began to relax his body, before he looked at them with dead eyes filled with sadness, regret, and hidden rage that caused all those looking to feel his pain. Naruto then replied and said, "I got it when I left the village a few years ago, when I met my pop because it was his mark. I still wear it to not only make him proud but also to remind myself of one of my greatest mistakes in not being able to keep him safe, but I promised him before his death that I would not let it hold me back." With that, Naruto walked inside, leaving everyone to think about what could have possibly happened to him when he left the village, as well as confused on what he meant when he said, his pop. The ANBU then left except for Kat, who was still there along with the female clan heads. The clan heads, Kat and Kushina, were all wondering what could have happened that would cause such a reaction from him. Meanwhile, Naruto and Kurami were trying to figure out what had happened to him. Naruto, because she wanted to know what happened to Naruto and what she could to do help. Kurami, because Naruto has always told her everything and this was something that he hadn't told her, which saddened her greatly. With Naruto. Naruto was in the shower, going over what had just happened, and lying in the drawer with his clothes was a scroll that held a certain fruit. I can't believe it almost came out again. Naruto thought, I need to get more control so that it won't go berserk again, and broke my promise. He then remembered what was in his possession and gripped his hand. I also need to figure out what to do with that fruit. Naruto was berating himself for almost releasing a piece of that power by mistake, and letting his emotions weaken his control. He couldn't let every reminder of his mistake cause him to go off the rails, especially when he swore to never let it hold him back and needed to figure out what to do with the fruit inside the scroll. He began to remember what led to his father's death, him swearing to never let it hold him back before he came back, and the first time he ever went berserk, and him taking possession of the fruit. Flashback 2 weeks before Naruto was seen returning by Hinata. Naruto was crying as he was watched as his pop was dying after taking so much damage. He covered in slash marks from swords and was full of holes of different sizes, with the two worst being the two massive holes in the front of his torso. His white crescent-shaped was broken on the left side, blood leaking down from his mouth, head and all of the wounds. He was standing at his full height of 21 feet 10 inches, shirtless, wearing blood-stained, light-colored pants tucked into his large black boots, a white captain's coat that bore the same symbol on Naruto's back, and a black bandana on his head with a matching dark sash tied around his waist. This was Edward Newgate, also known as Whitebeard, one of the Yonko. Naruto was blaming himself for being so caught up fighting. He never noticed the traitor to his pop's family come up and begin to attack his pop. It wasn't until the announcement that his pa was dying that he realized what had happened. He was listening to his pop's last words when he then looked at Naruto and said, "Remember, my son, you should never let your anger get the better of you, because it is when you do that you cause the worst damage to those around you and yourself. So please, after this, let yourself live life to the fullest and try your best to not let it out of control so you can live without regrets and worries, and I want you to take my place among the Yonko, as well as my weapon that I will entrust to you." Naruto was crying tears as he couldn't believe that his pop was dying, and he wasn't there to help protect him. He couldn't believe that he had failed to keep him safe, and yet his pop still wanted him to take his place, as well as his weapon. As Naruto was thinking about this, everyone from his pop's crew to every one of their allies began to leave, but he didn't move. He kept standing there with his eyes slowly widening before he began slowly get angry. Marco, who was retreating with the others, turned around and saw Naruto just standing there not moving. Marco tried to get to his crewmate but was then grabbed and swept away with the others who were retreating to their ships. The Whitebeard crew and all their allies were already out at sea and hadn't realized they had left Naruto until Marco shouted, "Wait! We left Naruto behind!" The entire Whitebeard crew and their allies suddenly turned to see Naruto still standing in the same spot with his head down, surrounded by marine soldiers. They were about to turn around to go get him until Naruto's head snapped up to show he was filled with rage and his eyes were glowing completely white before he started screaming with pain, sadness, and rage in his voice. Then, A huge burst of red chaotic energy that began to go off in waves as he continued to shout, causing massive shockwaves to happen with electricity flowing everywhere. This caused an explosion of light that caused everyone to shield their eyes, and when the light died down along with the energy, they all saw standing in Naruto's place was a shiny, metallic-looking demon with glowing white eyes and a glowing mouth filled with fangs and claws. Behind him, looking connected to his shoulders, were 4 huge glowing yellow-orange arms with claws made of energy before he let out a roar of anguish and anger before everything flashed white. Flashback end. Naruto remembered waking up covered in bandages in the mobi with a whitish-blue pair with swirls in the shapes of the letter S all over it on the stand next to the bed. While he was looking around, he saw his pops Bicento leaning on the wall in the room. He then heard the door open and saw Marco walk in, and he began to shout that Naruto was alright. The others then came rushing in exclaiming their joy at seeing him awake and alive. They all then informed him that after whatever happened, they all returned for him, only to find that the entire base had been destroyed with the only survivors being the Marine admirals who had already left when he transformed, and that all the Marine soldiers and Marshal D. Teach and his crew died as well. This led the group to finding 2 of their fruits had changed into the Gurugura no Mi that was next to him, but the Yami Yami no Mi, they weren't sure what to do with it as they were afraid something would happen to it. Naruto then suggested that he take it with him inside a scroll that would never leave his side until he could find a proper owner. The others agreed, and they brought the Yami Yami no Mi, which was a fruit that looked to be made of a lot of teardrop-shaped pieces with swirled designs on them, and they watched him bring out 2 scrolls. They watched as he unrolled the one with the kanji 4 souvenirs on it, to reveal an intricate design of markings before he placed his hands on the scroll before in a puff of smoke he unsealed a pair of black-rimmed, maroon-tinted sunglasses, a pair of golden snake earrings, a snake-shaped gem necklace, a pair of red-rimmed glasses, 3 pieces of blue, hollowed-out steel that looked to be able to come together, a pair of red, ball-shaped earrings, a green furizurka with light green lining, a pink and purple bandana, a white cowboy hat, and finally a light green feather. Once done, he asked for the fruit, which he placed among the pile of items, then resealed everything. He then opened the other scroll and copied the designs before he then wrote a note and sealed it inside, before rolling up the scroll and titling it Darkness, and rolling it up. Everyone was confused until he explained that it was a way misdirect thieves, which got looks of understanding from everyone. They all then informed him that he had been unconscious for 5 days, and during that time they had been sailing around and were currently resting on a nearby island before asking what he wanted them to do. He said that they should set sail towards his home and afterwards they would leave him there so that he may continue training and that Marco would be in charge until he returned. The crew obviously disagreed with this decision, but then they stopped when he told them that he would be fine and that should they ever need him, to come back and send a message to Konoha, which is the village he was from. This got them to agree, and before long, they had been on their way back to his home, which took another 6 days of sailing, during which Naruto or the Gurugura no Mi, gaining his pop's powers, and began to lightly practice them, due to where he was. They eventually reached the elemental nations, where Naruto disembarked, but not before giving Marco a couple of envelopes that held letters and pieces of his vice card that he asked be sent to specific places or people. Marco agreed wholeheartedly, giving Naruto peace of mind before he began making his way to Konoha, which took another 3 days of walking, which was the most he could do because of his injuries, and continuing to lightly practice his pop's powers. When he finally returned to Kurami, who had stayed behind to keep watch of what happened in the village, and with his Ka-san and his Amudo, he was fret over by Kurami upon seeing his bandages, before he managed to calm her down and tell her he was alright. Kurami then told him that the village hadn't been up to much, and then she told him how his Ka-san and Amudo had begun training heavily alongside several kunoichi clan heads and their daughters, as well as their children's female friends, also that they could bring him back home. This had surprised Naruto when he heard this, but then this lit a fire in himself to continue to get stronger and train harder, so that he wouldn't be left behind. Naruto shook himself out of his thoughts and finished his shower, before leaving his hair untied showing its true luster after the shower, putting on some maroon-colored sweatpants that closed at his ankles and a simple gray muscle shirt. He then walked out of the bathroom and smelled food and followed his nose, which led him to the kitchen where he saw his Ka-san, Kurami, Tsum, Mikoto, Hitomi, Anko, Kurinai, and Yugao all cooking. Kurinai then turned and saw Naruto looking at all of them curiously with his head tilted, causing her to blush and eep when she saw his strong, powerful-looking arms. This got the attention of the rest of the women in the kitchen before they all began to blush as well, causing an awkward silence. Before Anko broke it by whistling and exclaiming, "Damn! You're providing us one hell of a view, you know." Naruto knew this was an attempt to tease him before he gave a smirk that Anko could say she was proud of and acted innocent before saying, "Really? You're okay with just this?" Naruto asked innocently, getting Anko to blush at realizing that he had her in a corner with the rest of the women sending subtle glares at her for opening her mouth. "I would have figured you'd try and rip my shirt off to see these," Naruto continued gaining their attention again, when they saw him lift the front of his muscle shirt with his right hand, revealing his rock-hard abs while having a confident look, which got him the reaction he wanted of all the women turning beet red and beginning to pant slightly before he let go of his shirt and began laughing while walking away. This action got the women's blushes to deepen, realizing they had just been played but also out of arousal from seeing Naruto look so sexy. They all then felt themselves and thanked their stars for planning ahead and bringing spare panties because his sex appeal was off the charts. Naruto was walking through the house when he heard the sound of training and looked outside to see his sister and all her female friends from class all training. He saw Naruto and Satsuki training in Kenjutsu, Kira and Hinata were helping Ino, Sakura and Yakumo with their physical abilities by helping them in taijutsu. Naruto saw no reason to interrupt them and sat down on the wood floor and began watching them, while mentally taking notes on any flaws he sees. He saw Naruto and Satsuki were doing well, but their stances had holes that he knew any experienced shinobi or swordsman could take advantage of and land a critical strike. However, he knew these holes weren't from lack of training and actually from lack of battle experience. He then turned his attention to the others and saw that Kira's style relied on speed and combos with her partner who was currently sitting down in the shade. He couldn't say much about her regular taijutsu style, due to her not working with her partner, but he could see that in simple one-on-one fights where her partner was injured or she was separated from him, she would be in trouble because she didn't have a second style to fall back on should those scenarios happen. He then saw Hinata and immediately realized that she was strong and being a Hyuga would really help due to her Byakugan, but she didn't really focus on attacking or seem very confident, which could be her downfall. But he understands that she is a kind spirit and has low self-confidence. He then watched Ino and Sakura and decided that they needed to get their stamina and endurance up as well as their strength and get a proper style because they are going more for brawler styles at the current time. Yakumo, he saw something was severely wrong when she looked about to collapse even though she wasn't as physically adept as the others, she should have at least been the same level as Sakura and Ino, maybe a little better. While he was looking at Yakumo, he didn't notice Kira stop and sniff the air, before turning to his direction and seeing him. She blushed before she shouted, "Hey, Naruto!" This got the reaction of all the girls stopping what they were doing to see Naruto calmly sitting on the floor of the porch, waving at all of them while calmly smiling. The girls all blushed seeing him with his hair out of its ponytail, because it made him look more handsome in their opinion, as well as wearing a muscle shirt which showed off his arms very nicely. Hinata began to heavily blush, Sakura and Ino were blushing as well, with hearts in their eyes. Kira was blushing brightly and had drool coming out of her mouth, and Satsuki, Yakumo, and Naruto just had light blushes, with Satsuki and Yakumo trying to not let it be noticed by turning their heads. Naruto then asked, "What are you doing, Nisan?" Naruto chuckled at their reactions before replying, "Well, I was walking around and then I saw all of you training and decided to sit and watch, so that I could offer some help." This got the girls' attention as they then asked how they did. "Well, you all are doing very well in your own rights." Naruto began getting them all to smile. "However, there are just a few things that I saw, which could be problematic for you guys in the future." This got the girls to be serious and listen to what he had to say. "Naruto and Satsuki, you both are amazing at Kenjutsu and your forms are amazing as well. However, there are a few holes in your stances and when you move, but that is just due to lack of battle experience, so you should be fine as you grow and fight," explained Naruto, getting the two to smile and nod in understanding. He then turned to Kira. "Kira, I didn't see much because you were focusing on helping these three with their taijutsu and physical training, which is great, and from what I saw, I have no doubt that you will be a great teacher in the future." This got Kira to blush at his confidence in her. "Now, one thing I do know about your clan is that you work with your Niken to perform your attacks, which is your greatest strength but also your greatest weakness." This got Kira to look at him in surprise. Naruto then went on to explain, "You see, while you both can work great together, if Akamaru gets hurt, lost or separated from you, then you will have to fight by yourself, which, from what I know, you can't do because you don't have a second taijutsu style to fall back on." Kira then understood what he meant. If she ever lost Akamaru or he was hurt, and she was on her own, then she would have to fight by herself. She looked at Naruto and nodded her head in understanding. Naruto then looked at Hinata. "Hinata, you are strong already, but the thing is, you don't seem to want to go on the offensive or seem too confident in yourself, which could be hazardous to not only yourself but your teammates as well." Hinata looked down, saddened by this fact, until Naruto explained it. "It's okay to be kind and to have a kind heart, but you also have to be confident because if not, you may doubt a decision and this could cause your team to fail a mission that could be critical or lead to them being hurt." Hinata understood what he meant and looked up at him, and nodded her head with a small smile on her face. Naruto smiled and nodded as well, showing that he was happy she was taking it so well. He then turned to the last three. "Now you three, I understand aren't as physically fit as the others." This earned Naruto 3 embarrassed blushes and sheepish looks. "Now, Ino and Sakura, you two are doing okay as you are. All you need to do is build up your stamina and endurance some more, and find a taijutsu style for yourselves. Ino and Sakura nodded before they agreed to get back to training once he was done talking. Finally, Naruto turned to Yakumo and raised an eyebrow at her in curiosity. Now, you confused me a bit. This got everyone to be confused. Even if you're not as physically adept as everyone, you should at least be at their level. He pointed at Ino and Sakura, getting them to blush, if not, just slightly better. But you seem to be doing worse, like something is holding you back or is sealed. This got Yakumo to tense and pale, which was missed by no one. What's the matter? Yakumo looked around and saw her friends were looking at her with worry and Naruto was looking at her with concern and worry. Yakumo sighed before she spoke. You're right, it is because I have a deal on me that holds back my power. Why do you have it though? Asked Naruto, curious about why this is the case along with the other girls. It is because my power is dangerous. When I was younger, my power would lead me to blacking out, and when I woke up, I would find that I did something bad. Yakumo explained with a shaky voice, sounding very scared when she suddenly felt a hand on her shoulder and looked up to see Naruto smiling at her, getting her to relax and blush at how close he was to her. You don't have to worry about your power. I have a theory, and if it's correct, I may be able to fix your power and get rid of the seal afterwards. But I will need you to trust me, okay? Asked Naruto. Yakumo thought about it for a second, before she looked up and nodded. Naruto nodded as well and sat down before asking Yakumo to sit as well. She sat in front of him and asked what he was going to do. Naruto explained that he was going to take the both of them into her mind so that they can fix everything. Naruto put his hands on Yakumo's head and was about to dive in to help. This was when Kurinai came out to gather all the girls for lunch, when she saw Naruto and Yakumo, and shouted, "Stop! Don't do it!" Getting the girls' attention and causing the adults inside to all come rushing out to see what was happening, but they were too late, as Naruto's and Yakumo's heads drooped down, showing they were unconscious, but Naruto's hands were still on her head. The adults began running over to separate the two, but when they were about to reach for them, a barrier of white energy formed around the two, preventing anyone from disrupting them. Kurinai then began to panic and shouted, "We have to stop him and get him out." "Why? What's wrong with what he's doing?" "Whatever it is he's doing," asked Kushina, beginning to worry about her son after just reuniting with him. Kurami felt for Naruto through the seal and figured out what he was doing. It seems he is diving into her mind with her in order to help her fix a problem she is having with her powers, and it seems this barrier is his doing as well and is some sort of auto-defense when he is performing something and cannot move. Kurami informed the others, getting everyone to become curious about the energy and relax, except for Kurinai, who was still panicking, which was not missed. "Is there a reason you're still panicking, Kurinai?" Kurami asked with narrowed eyes, getting everyone to focus on Kurinai. Kurinai sighed before she began. "A couple years ago, I was Yakumo's sensei with her being my apprentice. This surprised everyone at finding out that Yakumo was originally Kurinai's apprentice. She was a prodigy when it came to genjutsu, as her genjutsu were so realistic and strong that only someone of equal power could break out of them, but she was born with a weak body. The crazy part was that she was actually still growing, but her abilities were derived entirely from her clan's Kekkei Genkai, and would continue to make her more powerful. Her abilities were so strong at one point that if you were cut in the genjutsu, your brain actually thought you were cut in real life and your body would reflect that cut in real life. This got surprised looks from everyone there because they shocked that someone so young was so powerful. At one point, she used to use paintings to create her illusions, but they were still so powerful that I had to begin sealing away bits of her power at a time in order for her to get used to them. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it turned out to be the worst thing because eventually, all of the sealed power took on a consciousness of its own and began to call itself Ito, and it seemed to hold all this malice inside of itself. I can't describe it right, but the feeling of the one time I saw it and felt its presence because it took over her body, I thought I was in a living nightmare. At this point, everyone was beginning to worry about Naruto, wondering if he would be okay because from what they're hearing, this may be something very bad. However, it was at this time, they noticed the barrier begin cracking, before it completely shattered with a slight bang, and a bright light, causing everyone to shield their eyes. When the light died down, they saw Naruto and Yakumo still on the floor. The only differences were that Yakumo looked different as she filled out so that her previous low B-cup breasts turned into old D-cup with legs to match. Her original brown hair was now mixed with strands of amber, and finally, she was currently kissing Naruto, who looked surprised, with her arms around his neck, making sure that she thoroughly enjoyed it. All the women there began to look and feel extremely jealous, except for Kurami as she expected something like this to happen. The other girls were jealous and wished that they were in Yakumo's place, with the grown women being jealous that they didn't have a kiss from Naruto. After Yakumo broke the kiss, everyone saw a string of saliva still connecting the two, before Yakumo smiled greatly, showing so much more emotion than she has in years, shocking her friends, and Kurinai hugged Naruto and began thanking him repeatedly, while her eyes began tearing up. While Yakumo was thanking Naruto, everyone was confused on what happened in Yakumo's mind to cause such a reaction. 5 minutes ago, inside Yakumo's mind, Naruto and Yakumo were diving through her mind, heading to the root of the problem. On their way down, they saw images of memories passing by. They ignored these and kept going, until they reached an area that was dark and gloomy, where instead of images of memories, they all looked like paintings of Kurenai suffering through different deaths and tortures. Yakumo was holding onto him from behind and was scared, and she ducked behind him even more when they heard a voice. "Who are you?" asked a voice that seemed to be shifting between two voices. Naruto looked forward and saw a monster that was dressed the same way as Yakumo, with a pink kimono that was over red mesh armor, violet baggy pants, orange sandals, and had her matching brown hair that was straight on one side and had a braid on the other with a clip in her hair that had two circular designs in it. The only difference was that the monster had brown skin, long ears that shot out to the sides, for fangs with the top two being extra long, purple crescent marks under the eyes, and purple eyes with a pure black pupil. This was Ito, the manifestation of Yakumo's powers that became conscious, and it looked angry. Naruto stood his ground with a fierce look of determination and replied, "My name is Naruto and I am a friend of Yakumo's who wanted to see what was wrong with her and help, and it appears that I have found the problem. This body is too weak for her to wield our power. So, I'll take over and show those who look down on us," exclaimed Ito. Naruto just looked saddened by this and said, "But can't you see that you're hurting Yakumo more by not working together? If you want to show everyone they were wrong, then work together so that no one will ever look down on you." Naruto then turned and looked at Yakumo, who was surprised to see that Naruto wasn't afraid of Ito. Naruto then added, "Both of you." Ito was beginning to calm down and asked, "But what if they still look down on us?" Naruto then gave a calm smile and said, "Then I will always be there to remind you both, that even if the world looks down on you too, I will always believe in you." Yakumo and Ito both were surprised by this, before the area began to change from dark and gloomy to a wide open field of grass, with ponds, trees and a bright, blue sky filled with clouds. Also standing before Naruto was Yakumo, who looked different. She also looked healthier than she had before and happier as well. Yakumo opened her eyes to reveal that she still had one light brown eye, but the other had turned amber in color. When she laid her eyes on him, immediately jumped at him, wrapped her arms around his neck and gave him a kiss. Naruto was surprised by this turn of events, and then the world flashed in a bright white light, causing him to shut his eyes. When he opened his eyes, they were back in the real world, and Yakumo was still kissing him, which very much surprised him, before she broke it off and began hugging him while thanking him over and over. He then looked around and saw everyone was staring at him and Yakumo, which got him to blush in embarrassment at having everyone stare at them. He then put up a hand and said, "What's up, everyone? What are you doing here?" Kurenai was the first to get out of her shock and asked, "What are we doing? What were you thinking? Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" This got everyone else to snap out of it as well, and began to look at Naruto with expectant looks, as well as looks of jealousy at Yakumo getting to kiss him. Naruto was confused. "What are you talking about? All I did was help Yakumo-chan fix a problem with her power in her mind by talking to it. Did nobody think of doing that?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Kurenai began to blush and drop her head in embarrassment, admitting that she hadn't thought of that. Naruto just chuckled and got up, with a little difficulty due to Yakumo not wanting to let go, but he simply moved her to his back. Then he walked over to Kurenai, and lightly patted her back while smiling at her and said, "It's okay, I didn't expect you to think of doing that, especially when you had previously been her sensei but then grew scared. I understand that everyone grows scared, and when they do, they don't want to try anything related to the person or object. But I do know from what I saw that you tried your best." Kurenai simply nodded, while everyone began to smile at Naruto, not blaming Kurenai for not helping more. Naruto then added, "Besides, you have someone to talk to." Naruto then brought Yakumo out from behind him, after he finally got her to let go, and placed her in front of Kurenai. The two stared at each other for a few minutes without saying anything, before Yakumo decided to break the silence. "I'm sorry." This surprised Kurenai at Yakumo apologizing. "I should have done a better job at trying to control and understand my powers. Can you forgive me?" At this point, Yakumo was crying, thinking that Kurenai wasn't going to forgive her, but she was surprised when she felt a pair of arms wrap around her. She looked up to see Kurenai was the one holding her, and was also crying, which surprised her. Kurenai then said, "You shouldn't apologize for my failure in being unable to help you. I should be the one apologizing for not trying harder to help you. So, can you forgive me, Yakumo?" Yakumo was still crying, but this time it was out of joy as she began smiling while hugging Kurenai back, and she said, "Yeah, I forgive you." Everyone began to smile at the scene before them. While this was going on, Naruto had moved to the back with Kurami and began smiling as well at being able to help someone. Kurami then reached over and grabbed his hand, gaining his attention, and she smiled at him before saying, "You did a good thing, you know that?" Naruto nodded and said, "Yeah, but I still don't know how to react to that kiss." Kurami giggled, "Well, do you like her that way?" Naruto blushed a little and said, "Yeah, but what about you?" Kurami just replied, "I'm fine with it, and luckily, because you're the last male of a clan, you will be placed under the CRA, so you can have multiple girls and not feel guilty about it." Naruto nodded, "Well, that's a load off my mind, but I don't think that will be possible at the current time, while the bastard is still Hokage," Naruto said with venom at mentioning Minato. Kurami then frowned and realized that he was right because while Minato was still Hokage, he could force Naruto to get married to anyone he chooses, and they would only care about his money and prestige as part of the Uzumaki clan. Kurami then had a thought, "Well, what if you date her? But don't let anyone know except for me and those we can trust." At this, Kurami motioned to all the women present before continuing, "Until a new Hokage is chosen." Naruto thought about it, and decided that it was a good plan, and there didn't seem to be any issues of trust, so Naruto nodded, agreeing with the plan. He then cleared his throat, gaining everyone's attention, and began telling them the plan. All the women present agreed with it, with Yakumo also blushing brightly, because she could stay with Naruto, and not feel bad. The others also felt that this was their chance to get together with Naruto as well, all they needed was the opportunity to do so. With that, everyone then went inside and ate lunch before they spent the day relaxing. Naruto, Yakumo, and Kurami were all relaxing on couch, with Yakumo and Kurami relaxing on either side of Naruto and laying their heads on his shoulders. The others felt jealous at not being in their place, but then told themselves they could wait, and when they got him, it would be worth it. Later at night. It was now the middle of the night, and everyone had gone to bed with Kurami and Naruto sharing a room, but they weren't sleeping like the rest, and were instead making out with Kurami on top of Naruto. Kurami was running her fingers through his hair while Naruto was running his hands up and down her body before resting them on her nice, firm ass. He gave it a squeeze, earning a moan from Kurami, who hadn't broken the kiss yet, and when she did, there was a string of saliva still connecting the two, and Kurami had a look of lust on her face. Naruto then asked, "What do I owe this turn of events to?" with a smirk. "Well, I thought about rewarding you for doing such a good job helping that girl out, and then I remembered that it's been 3 years since our last time together, that I couldn't help myself," Kurami said with a matching smirk, while beginning to loosen her clothing. "So, what do you say? Do you want this sexy fox or what?" Naruto's response was to leap at her and tear off her kimono blouse and look her in the eyes with a wild look and said, "Oh, I really want this fox." Lemon ahead. If you are under 18, skip to the next bold section. If you don't care or are over 18, then please don't hate. This is my first time writing a lemon after all. Naruto began attacking Kurami's neck with kisses, licks, and bites, getting Kurami to moan out loud and getting the two to thank Kami that they put silencing seals up. Naruto then began to move down and attack her collar with little bites. All of this was leaving hickeys all over Kurami's neck, and she was enjoying it because it let her feel like he was marking her again and again, and she was feeling very wet. Kurami then began to moan even louder, get even more wet, when he began to kiss and suck on her left breast while fondling the other one before he then switched. As he was doing this, she began to squirm from the buildup she was feeling in her lower regions, then before she knew it, coming. She came, and she came hard. As she was coming down from her orgasm, Naruto began to look at her with a predatory look and a smirk. "Did you just come from having your breasts teased?" Kurami covered her face and began to blush. She knew what he was up to. He had done it the first time they had been together, and she hated when he took control from her, but at the same time she loved it. With her blush still on her face, she nodded her head, getting Naruto to chuckle and say, "You do remember what your punishment was from the last time you came without me, right?" Kurami uncovered her eyes but still covered the rest of her face with her hands and nodded. Naruto then gained an expectant look. "Well, get to it." Kurami nodded and got up, before she took off her pants and revealed the black lace thong she had before she took that off and stood in front of him in her full glory, also revealing the large amount of love juices dripping down from in between her thighs. She turned around, got down on her hands and knees and looked over her shoulder at him, all with her blush still present. Please give this naughty fox her punishment, Naruto-sama," Kurami said, while enticingly shaking her hips and ass, getting Naruto harder than he ever was. Naruto began to undress himself, until he was also fully naked, revealing his 12-inch cock that was 3 inches thick. Kurami saw this and began to leak even more from her, as well as began shaking her hips more with a bright blush on her face. Naruto moved over behind her, and began to aim at her, before he slammed it all inside of her in one go and had entered her womb. Kurami let out a loud, screaming moan, showing she had come again from him entering her. Naruto hadn't moved and she knew why, because her punishment required that she move until he climaxed, then her punishment was over. The hard part, however, was that she had to slam him back inside completely, which always caused her to come, but she had to do it. So, Kurami began to move forward until only the tip of his was still inside her before she slammed it back inside her, causing her to moan and come again. She kept this up for 30 minutes, until finally she felt Naruto's begin to twitch inside of her, and a few more thrusts later, he finally came inside of her, getting her to come again, before her legs and arms finally gave out. Kurami's body was still shaking from all the pleasure she felt, and all the times she came, until she felt her hips being lifted, and Naruto then re-entered inside of her before he began thrusting inside of her again, causing her to begin moaning again. And Naruto. Wait, I am still coming down from before. Kurami exclaimed, but Naruto ignored her pleas to slow down. But I still haven't come enough yet, Naruto replied, before he began thrusting even faster into Kurami. Kurami began moaning even more from the pleasure, as every time Naruto bottomed out, he would re-enter her womb, which was her weak spot. Naruto kept going for another 25 minutes before he came again inside of Kurami. As they kept going, they began changing positions using doggy style, cowgirl, reverse cowgirl, missionary, full Nelson, Naruto bending Kurami over the bed, pushing her against the wall and thrusting into her from behind and in front. 3 hours later, Naruto had just finished coming inside of Kurami for the 8th time, with Kurami looking 5 months pregnant. Kurami thought they were done, until she moaned and screamed from pleasure and pain, when Naruto thrusted his inside her ass. And Naruto-kun. Not there. That's my ass. I'll go crazy. Kurami exclaimed, but Naruto simply replied, I know, I want you to go crazy. Finally, another 2 hours later, they were beginning to wind down, with Naruto fucking Kurami in missionary, and kissing her, while Kurami had her eyes rolled up and wrapped her arms around his neck and her leg around his waist. Naruto then broke the kiss and said, Kurami, I'm gonna come. Yes. Come inside me again. Keep coming inside me until I'm pregnant with your child. Kurami exclaimed with her tongue falling out of her mouth, and her eyes rolling up with the pupils shrinking. Naruto then came inside Kurami with a roar, and Kurami gave a screaming moan before she passed out from the amount of pleasure she had received from her mate. Lemon over. This is where those of you who skip the lemon may stop and continue reading. Naruto then fell to lay beside Kurami, who had begun instinctively curling up into his side while wrapping her arms around him. Naruto looked at her with half-lidded eyes and smiled softly before wrapping his arms around her, getting Kurami to smile in her sleep, before he then went to sleep. Time skip, 4 days later. It has been 4 days since Naruto began dating Yakumo after helping her, as well as since he slept with Kurami for the first time in 3 years, and it was now time for the genin to receive their team assignments. It had been an interesting time during the past 4 days. The morning after Naruto and Kurami had sex was an interesting time for the duo. First, Kurami couldn't get out of bed because she had no feeling in her lower half, and so Naruto carried her to the shower, where they spent another hour together. After that, when everyone was together eating breakfast, they all noticed Kurami had a glow about her. The younger girls all asked how she got her skin to glow so much, with Kurami answering that she was using an all-natural cream. The girls bought it, but the older women all knew better and that this cream must have come from Naruto, as they all had experience in bed, even if it wasn't all good or with good men. After that morning, everyone had been training with Naruto, focusing on their taijutsu and physical abilities, Kushina helping with kenjutsu and reaction times, Kurinai helping with genjutsu, and all of the grown women helping with ninjutsu because every person had different affinities. Kushina would help Naruto and Satsuki keep up their kenjutsu skills, and help the others learn how to face someone using kenjutsu against them. Kurinai helped Yakumo, Sakura, and Ino learn genjutsus while teaching the rest how to break out of them. Each woman also helped by teaching everyone jutsu for their affinities, like Sakura had an earth affinity, Hinata had a water affinity, Yakumo had wind and earth affinities, Kira had an earth affinity. The three that surprised everyone were Naruto, Satsuki, and Naruto. Satsuki had her clan's fire affinity as well as a strong lightning and water affinities, which surprised everyone at this because while the lightning was a possibility, the lightning would normally have been weak and the water would not have been possible. Naruto had water, wind, and lighting, which was expected as her mom had wind and water, with her dad having lightning, but it was still a surprise to see she had 3 affinities. The real surprise, however, was Naruto, as it was found that he had affinities for each element except for earth. Nobody expected this except for Kurami, as she knew what his affinities were from living inside of him for so many years. After that, everyone continued training, with Naruto being the last teacher. Naruto would assist the girls with their flaws by training and sparring with them in taijutsu. For Naruto and Satsuki, he fought them in taijutsu, and boy was that an eye-opener for them. Before they had begun, Naruto told them to come at him as if he was an actual enemy or with the intent to kill because he would not take it easy on them. They were hesitant at first, but when Naruto made the first move by disappearing and then reappearing in front of them and launched them both across the grounds, which surprised all the women at how easily he had done so, they no longer hesitated and began to attack him full force in taijutsu. The two knew they were good at taijutsu, but when they began fighting Naruto seriously, they realized that was better than them, way better, and this was a blow to their pride. They thought that they were the best in taijutsu among their class, but then Naruto came and annihilated them. However, he didn't let them wallow and used this to show them the flaws in their techniques, which brought their spirits up and made smile, happy that he was helping them. But then they began blushing when he would use his hands and touch their bodies, showing the flaws in their moves. All in all, they really enjoyed training with Naruto, fixed some of their flaws, and got better at taijutsu. Naruto did the same for Kira and Hinata, but with Kira, he taught her how to also slow down and calm down in order to focus better and pay attention to her surroundings in order to sense attacks from multiple directions. This involved him using shadow clones, which he was taught by Kushina, and placing them in multiple places at different distances with Kira in the middle, blindfolded, and then Naruto throwing plastic balls at her with enough strength that he left several bruises all over her body, until she finally began to calm down and was able to dodge and deflect every single one. Kira was proud that she was able to do it after 3 days of training, and felt extremely happy and blushed when Naruto told her that he was proud of her and to keep up the good work. With Hinata, Naruto helped her first begin building up her confidence some more in combat, then he had her begin to use her clan's taijutsu against him, but after a while, he had her stop when he noticed something about her style. She was confused and nervous on why he stopped, believing that he was going to call her weak and a failure, which he must have seen because he reassured her that there was nothing wrong with her. This got her to relax. She was very surprised when he instead asked what her elemental affinities were, and she replied water before asking why he wanted to know. Naruto explained that she looked to be uncomfortable with the way she was fighting and said they would need to edit her clan's technique in order to fit someone with her affinities and flexibility because her clan usually had earth affinities. This made where her clan's style of taijutsu was meant more for people with earth affinities as well as were more rigid, but because she had a water affinity and was more flexible, it was like her body was fighting itself in order to move how it was supposed to. Hinata nodded in understanding and asked him when they could fix it, with Naruto replying, they would begin as soon as she felt like it. Hinata had been grateful to Naruto helping her because she was now more confident during combat, and while she still didn't like hurting people, she would go on the offensive when needed. They had also finally changed her clan's taijutsu a bit so that it would better work for her, as she now felt more comfortable, and was now able to feel better about herself during training and combat. As for Yakumo, Ino, and Sakura, they received the most help from Naruto in order to build up their endurance and stamina, as well as begin learning some forms of taijutsu from Naruto. Ino and Yakumo learned judo, as this allowed them to learn how to deflect, flip, and throw people and not use too much energy. They both also blushed for many hours as Naruto would teach them what to do by placing his hands on there and demonstrate how a throw would go, by lightly and softly turning, throwing, and flipping them so that they wouldn't get hurt. They both loved feeling Naruto's hands on their bodies. Whether it was their arms, legs, hips, or torso, they loved feeling it, however they still paid attention to each lesson he taught. After each lesson, Naruto would have them try and do what he just taught to him, to see if they got it, and they both would perform the moves and also loved being able to grab his strong muscular body each time. As for Sakura, he taught her Muay Thai, as he explained that this allowed her to make stronger attacks than she normally could do to using her knees and elbows mainly while also allowing for fast strikes through making her limbs do a snapping motion which allowed for fast, quick strikes. He also used his hands to fix her stances and gave her examples of how a move should go. Afterwards, they both had a spar using only Muay Thai and Sakura proved to be a natural user thanks to her fit arms that she gained from training. Another interesting thing that happened was that Sakura's mom came one day looking for Sakura and met Naruto, and the meeting was quite interesting to say the least. Flashback. Mizuki's POV. Mizuki had been walking around the village looking for her daughter Sakura in order to tell her to come home as it was getting late. Mizuki was a beautiful woman with fair skin and shoulder-length blonde hair with a single bang falling down her face. She had green eyes and wore a white cheapao dress that hugged her double F-cup breasts with 3 red circular designs on the bottom of her dress and the back. Underneath she wore pink 3/4-length pants and brown sandals. Unknown to most in the village, as well as her husband and daughter, Mizuki used to be a kunoichi and was a damn good one, until she had Sakura and retired. After an hour of walking, Mizuki remembered that her daughter would go train at Kushina's house, and so she went in that direction. When Mizuki had finally come to Kushina's house, Kushina greeted her and asked what she was doing here, with Mizuki replying that she had come for her daughter. Kushina replied that she was in the back training and took Mizuki to the training grounds, and when Mizuki saw her daughter sparring with Naruto, she was ready to just immediately grab Sakura and then inform her husband, even though she didn't want to. For you see, unknown to popular belief, Mizuki did not hate Naruto and his family or think of Naruto and his family as demons or demon whores. Her husband did. She just didn't know them that well, and this caused her to be adamant about talking with them. But as she was about to call her daughter, she saw her daughter smiling a bright and warm smile that she had never seen on her daughter's face at home. After seeing this, she decided to wait and watch her daughter train with Naruto and not tell her husband. She had grown worried when her daughter was knocked to the floor, but she smiled when she saw Naruto help Sakura stand and then begin explaining what she did wrong with a smile, while praising her for doing a good job. Mizuki was surprised at how much of a good teacher Naruto was, and at this time, she decided to make herself known. Sakura had a look of surprise and slight worry at seeing her mother, which kinda surprised Mizuki at her daughter's reaction at seeing her, but it was Naruto's expression that surprised her the most, as when he saw her, his face instantly went neutral and cold with only his eyes expressing his curiosity at seeing her. This surprised Mizuki very much, as she hadn't expected him to suddenly change expression so quickly, but then she was broken from her thoughts when Sakura began stuttering at how she hadn't expected to see her, and what she was doing here with a fake smile. This hurt Mizuki because she hadn't realized how much she let her husband dictate their lives until now, or how unhappy her daughter was at home, because when she saw her daughter have a fake smile on her face, she instantly realized it was the same smile she gave them at home. Mizuki then agreed with herself that she liked the other smile she saw from her daughter that was warm, bright, happy. Mizuki told Sakura not to worry and that she was just coming to get her, and inform her that it was late and time to go home. Sakura was scared to go home, and Mizuki saw this and said not to worry because she wouldn't say anything to her husband anymore, as well as to keep up the good work. Sakura was stunned at this before she gave her mom her real, bright smile and acknowledged her mom's words before agreeing. Mizuki smiled and then turned to Naruto, who had softened his expression a bit when he saw Sakura smiling again before he went back to completely neutral when seeing Mizuki turn to him. Mizuki then did something that greatly surprised him. She bowed and thanked him for helping her daughter with her training. Upon hearing this, Naruto asked Mizuki to raise her head, and when she did, she blushed at seeing his expression had softened and he was smiling at her before he said that there was no need to thank him, as he just wanted to make sure she made it back to her friends and family alive after each mission. Mizuki smiled and thanked him regardless, before she explained to him and Kushina that she had never actually hated them, she just didn't know them well, and that it was her husband who hated them. This got Naruto to nod his head before he said that he already figured it was something like that, which earned him surprised looks from the three. When they asked how he knew, he explained that he didn't feel hatred or malice coming from Mizuki, just curiosity that was directed at him and Kushina, but was mainly directed at him. This surprised the group, and Kushina asked how he was able to tell what they were feeling, and Naruto explained that he could sense emotions and was able to tell which were negative, like hatred, neutral, like curiosity, and positive, like joy. Afterwards, Naruto then told Mizuki that if ever wanted to talk and get to know him, then all she had to do was ask. Mizuki nodded her head with a smile and said she would take him up on that offer. With that, Mizuki and Sakura left to go home, and while they were walking, Mizuki surprised Sakura when she could expect grandchildren, which got Sakura to blush, until Sakura gained a sly smile and asked Mizuki when she could expect siblings from her and Naruto. Mizuki sputtered in surprise at the sudden question with a bright blush, before she asked her daughter if it was noticeable that she was checking Naruto out, with Sakura shaking her head and replying no, but only she had caught it. Mizuki sighed before letting her daughter know that she had been planning to get a divorce with her husband because she just doesn't love him anymore. Sakura was surprised at first, until she began nodding her head, understanding that her mother and father may have been in love for a while, but then he eventually just became distant and cruel. Sakura told her mom that she would stand by her through the whole thing and that they could always go and ask Naruto and his family if they could live with them. Mizuki wasn't sure at first, but when Sakura told her that this would give them both the chance to get closer to Naruto and his family, as well as see Naruto more, Mizuki was sold and told Sakura that she would get the divorce soon. Flashback end. Normal POV. Now, it was time for the genin to receive their team assignments. Naruto was sitting in his seat, waiting for Irika to come and give them their teams, while he was also talking to the rest of the group, where he learned some random bits of information, but some was interesting. Like Choji apparently had a cousin whose father was a Kumo nin and her mother was his aunt on his mother's side. Naruto also learned that while Choji, his parents and her mom all treated her nicely, the rest of the clan and village seemed to be mean to her. He asked what her name was and found that it was Cho-Cho, and that she was actually part of their graduating class as well, and that she had been homeschooled so as to minimize the amount of teasing and bullying she received, but would be arriving today so that she would get her team assignments. Naruto nodded and asked Choji to let him know so that he could meet her and hopefully be friends with her, which got Choji to smile and nod his head, while telling Naruto that he would do so. Naruto then continued to listen and talk and learned that Shikamaru was the definition of lazy genius, as he was incredibly smart but just didn't like putting in effort. Naruto got to know that Shikamaru liked to lay down and watch clouds and play shogi, and that his clan used shadow techniques, which greatly interested Naruto. They began to talk about ways to use his clan's techniques, when Naruto suggested maybe using shadows that come from clouds to increase the shadow they can use. Shikamaru was very interested in this idea and said he would try it, and that they should hang out sometime, with Naruto agreeing. With Shino, Naruto just greeted him and told him of some bugs that he had encountered during the past few years, with Shino listening intently about these insects, and looked at the pictures of some of them that Naruto had. As for Sasuke, give me your power and teach me your techniques. Dobe. Naruto just ignored him as he kept trying to demand that Naruto give him secrets and power, until Naruto had enough and knocked him out with a simple back fist while having a straight face. At this, the entire class went silent in surprise, and all of Sasuke's fangirls were about to begin raging on Naruto until Naruto turned to them with the same face and stared at them. This made them feel like they were being stared at like they were nothing until they turned their heads down in fear. Naruto didn't like seeing this and stood up, which made the entire class watch, until he moved to the girls who still had their heads down, and he said that he wasn't mad at them. This surprised the fangirls, and then they looked up and blushed when they saw him smiling at them, before he then explained that he had earned and worked hard to get his strength, and that Sasuke was just trying to demand it from him when he wasn't willing to work for it, so he knocked him out to shut him up. They all then understood where Naruto was coming from, and all saw Sasuke was nothing but a spoiled brat who believes he should have everything. After they nodded their heads, showing they understood where he was coming from, while mentally realizing that Naruto was the better choice than Sasuke. Naruto must have sensed this, as he then told them that they would go farther as kunoichi if they took this seriously, and they may also get the attention of guys that they like. This made all of the girls gain serious expressions before they nodded, promising to themselves that even if they didn't gain Naruto's affections, they would do their best as kunoichi in order to impress someone. Now, everyone was sitting in their seats while quietly talking to each other about random things, when suddenly the door opened and walking in was a girl with a slightly heavier build. She had red lipstick-covered lips, dark-colored skin, amber-colored eyes and brown hair that was kept in two spiky ponytails, with the rest kept back with a pink headband, and her bangs covering her left eye. She was wearing a white kimono with a mesh armor t-shirt underneath that hugged her double G-cup breasts, her wide hips, mouth-watering thighs, and huge, firm-looking bubble butt. To finish, she had a yellow sash with a darker yellow ribbon, black arm warmers, and black shinobi long boots, with gray stud earrings in both her ears. For what I'm thinking, look up Boruto Chocho and look for the image with Sarada and Chocho walking with each other, sweating, wearing black sports bras and black yoga pants, with red towels in hand. That is the body type I am thinking of, with slightly thinner lips. When she walked in, everyone stopped talking and watched as she went to the back away from everyone else, before she took out a bag of chips and began eating them while ignoring everyone, with everyone beginning to talk to each other again. Naruto didn't know who this was, but he could feel that she was sad and he wanted to help, when he felt Choji begin to tap his shoulder. Naruto turned to Choji to see what was up. That's her. That's my cousin, the one I was telling you about, Choji told Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened for a second before he smiled and nodded, before he stood up, and began moving towards her without her noticing, until he sat down next to her. She noticed someone sit next to her, and glanced at them before blushing at seeing such a handsome boy sit next to her. She was still eating her chips while blushing and taking glances at him every now while thinking, oh my Kami. He is so handsome. And he sat next to me when there are so many seats available, and isn't making fun of me. I should say something before he begins to think I'm weird. She was broken from her thought when she heard him speak to her. Hello, how are you today? Naruto asked, gaining her attention with her looking like a deer in headlights due being caught off guard when he suddenly spoke to her when she was thinking of what to say. I fine, how are you doing? She replied, while inwardly cursing herself for stuttering. I'm doing well, especially after knocking out Sasuke over there, Naruto replied, while pointing to the knocked out Sasuke, who Naruto had written and drawn on his face. She looked closely and saw that on his forehead it said, sorry ladies, I only take men with big packages. This caused her to begin giggling but covered her mouth to not laugh out loud, before she saw on his right cheek it said, all sizes welcome, while pointing at his mouth. She let go of her chips, which Naruto caught before they hit the ground, in order to cover her mouth with both hands, before she then focused on his left cheek. On his left cheek it said two words that caused her to start just laughing like crazy. On his cheek it said, bitch boy. And he had a mustache drawn on him and fake glasses, with stitch marks going over his right eye. All of this caused her to begin laughing, which caused Naruto to begin laughing with her at realizing that she saw his artwork. Their laughter gained the attention of everyone else, with the girls blushing at Naruto, and how handsome he looked smiling, and they loved his laugh. The guys began to blush as well when they saw her smiling. After they were done laughing, she then asked, with tears in her eyes from laughing so much, "Who did that?" "I did because he was getting on my nerves and I decided simply knocking him out wasn't enough," replied Naruto. "Well, thank you for that, I really needed something to laugh at. Oh, my name's Chocho, by the way. Chocho Akimichi," the now named Chocho said while extending her hand to Naruto. Naruto smiled and said, "Well, nice to meet you, Chocho. My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I'm glad you enjoyed my artwork." Chocho giggled and said, "Yeah, I really enjoyed your artwork, especially since he was the main person who would bully me for having a parent who was from Kumo." Chocho finished with a frown. Naruto wrapped his arm around her shoulders and brought her into a one-armed hug, which surprised her and caused her to blush at feeling his strong, muscular body against hers. "Well, you don't have to worry about anyone else bullying you. Just let me know if someone does and I will take care of them myself," Naruto told her with a slight mischievous look on his face that caused her to blush a little more. Chocho then smiled and said, "Sure thing. But you know I can take of myself, right?" she asked with a raised eyebrow after getting out from under his arm, albeit reluctantly, seeing as she really enjoyed how his arm wrapped around her felt. It was now Naruto's turn to raise his eyebrow at her. "I kinda figured you would be able to. But is that any reason for me to not be allowed to help a beautiful girl out when she needs it?" Naruto asked. Chocho blushed at being called beautiful before replying with a smile, "No, I suppose you're right about that." Naruto then smiled and exclaimed, "Good. And, since I protect my friends and precious people, that makes us friends." Chocho blushed even more hearing his words. "You want to be friends with me?" "Of course. Why else would I cheer you up?" Naruto asked while tilting his head, getting Chocho to mentally exclaim, "Kawaii." Before she could reply, Iruka walked in and told everyone to sit in a seat, and he was pleasantly surprised to see everyone listen to him without him having to resort to his big head no jutsu, and was greatly surprised to see everyone have this new sense of determination. Iruka began looking around to see everyone had their eyes on him, but when his sight landed on Sasuke, he froze for a second before he began laughing at the hilarious sight before him. When he finally calmed down, he asked someone to wake him up. Naruto raised his hand and volunteered before he raised voice a little and said, "Sasuke will never be stronger than his brother." This got the reaction of Sasuke's eyes snapping open before he began shouting about who said that, and how he will make them eat those words. Iruka shook his head before saying, "Shut up, Sasuke, and go wash your face, you've got something right there," Iruka said while pointing at his face. This caused everyone to begin laughing at Sasuke, who ran out of the room to the bathroom. Every then heard a roar of, "Damn ITTT." That caused everyone to begin laughing even harder, with Naruto being the only one to simply smirk. 20 minutes later, Sasuke was back in his seat and the class was beginning to continue. Iruka then gave the usual speech of how proud he is of them, and to keep growing stronger to protect Konoha. Afterwards, Iruka began to call out the teams, and skipping teams 1 to 6, and Team 7 will be made of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Shikamaru Nara, and your sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. Team 8 will be Kira Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame, and your sensei will be Kurina Yuhi. Team 9 is still in rotation. Team 10 will be Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akimichi, and Yakumo Kurama, and your sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. And finally, Team 11 will Naruto Uzumaki, Satsuki Uchiha, Chocho Akimichi, and Naruto Uzumaki, and your sensei will be Kushina Uzumaki, with assistant sensei being Anko Mitarashi. Everyone was astonished at the final team as they weren't expecting this turnout for teams, especially the final team. However, not everyone was happy with this. "Why do they get 2 senseis while I'm stuck with these 2? I should be the one to receive 2 senseis. I am an Uchiha after all, an elite," Sasuke shouted, angered by how a couple of nobodies got 2 senseis when he was still got one that he has to share. Iruka had enough of Sasuke's attitude and said, "Sasuke Uchiha, you will respect the decision that has been made, or you can drop out completely and not have to worry about sharing a sensei because you won't have one." Sasuke then simply sat down and shut up, still completely upset at being stuck on a team with, in his mind, useless nobodies. Meanwhile, while the genin were receiving their team assignments, there was a big commotion coming from the village. The cause was a group of 4 beautiful women that had been seen entering the village and entered the Hokage Tower, who were all, except for one, wearing revealing bikinis made out of different animal skins with white coat around their shoulders that had bright yellow epaulets on the shoulders with black boots. One of them was wearing a brown revealing bikini. She had a quiver of arrows at her hip, and had a green and black striped snake around her waist. She had short blonde hair, dark brown eyes, and a curvaceous figure, as seen by her long legs, mouth-watering thighs, double E-cup breasts, and thin waist. Her name was Marguerite, and she was one of 3 bodyguards. The second lady was tall and had a green bikini top with white irregular patterns, and green panties with orange flaps circling her hips. She also had a white coat with bright yellow epaulets and brown boots. She had green wavy hair, sea green eyes, a wide head, and a wavy, forked tongue that stuck out of her mouth. She also had a curvaceous body as seen by her double I-cup breasts, wide hips, large bubble butt, and succulent thighs. Her name was Boa Sandersonia, and she was another of the 3 bodyguards. The third lady was also tall, and she wore a purple bikini with floral designs on the top, a pink flower necklace and brown boots along with a matching white coat with epaulets. She had long, wavy orange hair with the top of her hair styled to look like a Valkyrie's helmet. She had a slightly plump body with double H-cup breasts, wide hips, a large ass, and thighs. Her name was Boa Marigold, the last of the 3 guards, and in her hands was a large weapon with a long black pole, and a curved blade with an extra curved blade on the back of it. The last lady was the most beautiful, as seen with her long, straight black hair, black eyes, and curvaceous figure as seen by her J-cup breasts, long legs, thick thighs, wide hips, and firm ass. She was also wearing a matching white coat, along with a revealing red blouse that revealed much of her cleavage, a loose, red sarong that had pink and green floral designs that exposed her legs, and black high heels. Slithering next to her was a large white snake with large pink spots, a horned skull on its head with blue hair jutting out from the back of the skull. This was Boa Hancock, one of the Shichibukai, older sister to Sandersonia, and Marigold, and next to her was her snake, Salome. Currently, they stood in front of the one-armed Minato, who was also slightly blushing at the sight of the women's choice of clothing, as well as Boa's beauty. He then cleared his throat and mostly regained his composure, as seen by the slight blush still on his cheeks, before he asked, "Hello, who are you beautiful ladies?" Boa was the one who answered, "My name is Boa Hancock. These are my sisters Sandersonia and Marigold, who are acting as my bodyguards along with Marguerite." Minato nodded before asking, smiling, "And what may I do for today?" Sandersonia was the one who replied, "We came here today because we have information that they originated from this village and have recently come back." Minato nodded before asking, "All right, and who is it that you are looking for?" Marguerite was the one answered this time, "We are looking for Naruto-sama." She didn't notice the look of disdain that Minato got on his face for a second, but the other 3 did. "He told us that if we ever needed anything from him, then to come here and look for a village called Konoha." Minato now had a neutral look and asked, "And what is it that you need of him?" Boa, who was blushing, was the one who answered, and it was not what Minato was expecting. "We came to have him marry with us." At this, the other 3 began blushing as well. The entire room went silent, before the village heard a shout of, "WHAATTTTTTT." Right now, we find ourselves in the Hokage office, with Minato staring at the 4 women, who still had blushes and dreamy looks on their faces. Before him was shock, along with the NBU, even though you can't see them. They didn't understand why these 4 beautiful women would want to marry the demon. What on earth could he have possibly done to make them want to marry him? Minato then collected himself and asked, "May I know why you would like to marry him?" While trying to control his voice as best as possible, and was mostly successfully, but still let some disdain slip, which was caught by the women, except for Marguerite, who was still in La La Land, making them snap out of it and get stoic faces. Boa then cleared her throat, which finally snapped Marguerite out of it, and said, "We wish to marry him because we love him. He assisted us in our island of Amazon Lily, and we each got to know him and slowly fell in love with him." Minato raised his eyebrow. "And what exactly did he do for you in your island?" asked Minato, wanting to find out what the demon did that could possibly warrant this type of reaction. Well, Naruto-sama Sandersonia began to answer but was interrupted by an excited Marguerite. "He helped us protect our island from an invasion, even though we didn't allow him to stay past the docks when he first arrived," Marguerite explained, while having a starry look in her eyes. Sandersonia then coughed into her fist. "That is a shortened version, but yes, that is what he did." Minato heard this and began to think, "I refuse to believe that the demon was able to defend an entire island by himself, but if this is true, then that means the demon is getting stronger. I can't allow that, because if that happens, then I won't be considered the strongest in the village anymore. And that is something I refuse to let happen." You see, Minato has always been prideful, and it was that same pride that led him to treating Naruto terribly when he was a child, because he knew that Naruto was the child of prophecy. Because he figured, if Naruto was too weak to stop all the wars, then he would be able to swoop in and stop them himself, then he would get all the fame and glory. The only things that would have had to happen to achieve that is he get a new arm, and train himself to be stronger than Naruto. But now, if what he was hearing is correct, then that would mean that Naruto is stronger than he is. Minato then shook his head, and said, well, I'm sorry. But right now, he is getting his team assignments, so you will have to wait until he passes his Genin exam before being allowed to see him. What exactly do these Genin exams require? Marigold asked, curious about what was needed to pass. Minato replied, the exams all differ based on the sensei, and what they decide is the exam. But if I know his senseis, then they will most likely make the exam that of combat or something. But I know it will not be easy since one of them is one of the strongest kunoichi in the village. When Minato said this, he thought that they would begin to rage about what he was thinking. However, instead, Boa simply replied, oh, is that all? Minato was taken aback by this and exclaimed, what do you mean, is that all? Did you not hear what I just said? Boa replied, we heard you, but if it's Naruto-sama, then there is no need to worry. He is not someone who will be defeated easily by just anyone. With the others nodding their heads while having confident smiles on their faces. I agree, sister, said Sandersonia, especially since he has such a high bounty, that he earned for a reason and with these specific conditions. Sandersonia finished, while looking at a wanted poster that she took out, gaining Minato's attention. Bounty? Minato asked, while having greed clear in his eyes that all four women caught it. What bounty and what are the conditions? Marigold took the wanted poster and answered, he has a bounty of 750 million berry, or Rio for you, since it comes out the same, and the condition for his reward is wanted, dead but the warning is run on sight. She then handed the poster over to Minato for him to see. Minato took the wanted poster and had wide eyes. He couldn't believe that the demon had a bounty that was much higher than his own, and under the same conditions as himself. I refuse. I refuse to believe that the demon is that strong. Anyways, if you could direct us to the academy, then we will be on our way in order to see Naruto-sama again, said Sandersonia. Minato was about to tell them some made-up excuse in order to prevent them from meeting Naruto. But it seems that would not happen, as at the same time, all the jounin who were going to receive their team assignments came in and saw the four women. The men were all blushing up a storm while also having blood spewing from their noses, while the women were shocked at their choice in clothing. Boa, not wanting to deal with the men, turned to them, put her hands in front of her into the shape of a heart, and said, Mero Mero Mello. And from her hands came a beam in the shape of giant, pink hearts, that hit the men, and in a flash they all turned to stone. All of the shinobi were shocked to see this, as they didn't know what just happened. Minato then snapped out of his shock and said, that is an interesting power, Boa-san, but we need our shinobi, so can you please release them? Otherwise I will be forced to have you four placed under arrest, and I don't think you would want that. Boa looked reluctant, but then she decided that it was better to release these filthy males, rather than to be placed under arrest along with her sisters and fellow Kujo warrior. So, with great reluctance, Boa turned to the men and blew a kiss while saying, Mezumio. Everyone watched as she blew a kiss at the men that were turned to stone that summoned a small heart. They all watched as the heart began to float over to the men before it then popped, making a bunch of smaller hearts come out of it. Everyone, who wasn't turned to stone, watched as the stones slowly receded until the men were all back to normal. Everyone was amazed at this ability. They all wanted to know what happened and how it was possible. There, began Hancock, they are back to normal. Now, may we go and see him or not? Asked Hancock, making everyone, except Minato and the ANBU present, curious on who they were here to see. However, before anyone could say anything, they all suddenly began to feel tremors, causing them to begin losing their footing, except for Hancock, Sandersonia, Marigold, and Marguerite. As the tremors continued, they suddenly began to feel stronger, causing everything began getting messy. Scrolls began falling to the ground and unravel, pictures fell off the walls with the frames breaking, and the neat stacks of documents began to fall all over the ground. What the hell? What is going on? Minato exclaimed while holding onto the desk, with the shinobi wondering the same thing. Hancock and the other three all began smiling, as Hancock said, he knows we're here. This gained everyone's attention, as they all began to look at the four, who they noticed were all smiling. Kurenai asked, what do you mean? Who knows you're here? All four looked at Kurenai, before they looked at each other and nodded, before returning their gazes to Kurenai. But just as they were about to answer, the door burst open, at the same time as the tremors stopped, knocking away all of the men who were still sitting in front of it. Everyone looked to see it was a grinning Naruto who was looking at the four, before he said, I knew that energy felt familiar. Upon seeing Naruto, everyone was wondering why he was here. The four Kujo warriors, however, began to smile before they all launched themselves at him, while exclaiming, Naruto-sama. The five of them landed on the floor with the four women hugging him tightly as Naruto returned the hug, and all of them laughing, with the women also rubbing up on him and Sandersonia and Marguerite grinding on his legs. All of a sudden, Naruto was surprised when Hancock just suddenly began kissing him, but swiftly got into it and began to return it, with the other 3 women, and the kunoichi watching, feeling jealous at not being in Hancock's place. Seeing this, all the shinobi who came for their team assignments went wide-eyed, not expecting these 4 women to suddenly launch themselves at Naruto or for one of them to begin a make-out session with him. But the big question they wanted to know was, where the hell did those tremors come from? Flashback 10 minutes before. While Minato was busy meeting Hancock and the others, all the students were waiting for their senseis to come and get them. They were either talking with each other, going over their equipment, or just sitting there, brooding, *cough Sasuke *cough. Naruto was still sitting in the back with Chocho while lying on the desk, but sitting with them was also Sakura, Hinata, Yakumo, Naruko, Ino, Kira, and Satsuki. They were all talking about still training together when they aren't on missions, or needed by their team, as well as days that they could all hang out, while all the males stared at Naruto with jealousy in their eyes, and the girls were staring at the girls wishing they were in their place. "So, what do you guys think about the teams?" asked Naruto, who looked very relaxed. "I guess they're alright, but I got stuck with the emo," said Sakura, getting winces from the girls and Naruto. "Yeah, that's gonna suck," said Satsuki, feeling pity towards Sakura for getting stuck with her stupid emo of a brother. Naruto then added, "Hey, if anything, you can use this as an opportunity to get some blackmail on him. Then we can all have something on him." The girls all thought about it and began giggling with evil smiles on their faces that made everyone else watching shiver in fear. "Well," began Ino, "I think we'll be fine with our team, right Yakumo?" she asked, getting the girl to look at her. "Yeah, plus, from what Chocho said, Choji is really nice and polite," Yakumo said, happy that she got a nice team. "We should be good as well, since we have Kurinai-sensei as our sensei. And Shino is also really nice, kinda quiet, but nice," Kira said, getting a nod from Hinata. Everyone then looked at Chocho, Satsuki, and Naruko, before Kira added, "Besides, we're all pretty jealous at your three's luck," with a playful glare that was matched by the other girls, while the 3 of them had blushes and chuckled nervously. Naruto also began to lightly chuckle with half-lidded eyes, while still laying his head on his arms. He liked to be here just relaxing with his friends, but he also misses some of the people he met while out on the sea. As he kept relaxing, he suddenly felt a flash of energy that made his eyes shoot wide open, and he shot up from his seat, startling the girls and gaining everyone else's attention. Naruto looked in the direction of the Hokage Tower and thought, was that? No, it couldn't be. Then, Naruto, another flash of the same energy, it is. Everyone watched as Naruto slowly grinned from ear to ear, before they were all surprised, Sasuke with envy, when Naruto's hands were suddenly covered in a bubble of clear, white energy before it spread to all over his body in a thin layer. They were all then surprised when at the same time that the bubbles were summoned, they all felt tremors begin to occur, causing all of them to begin clinging to their desks. Some of them looked out the windows and exclaimed how even the village was feeling the tremors, shocking everyone in the room. Naruto then began running out the door, before he made his way out of the academy. As he ran, every step he took caused the tremors to worsen all throughout the village, and every step left cracks that would spread out for about a foot in length from where he stepped. He kept running and was making his way towards the Hokage Tower. As he ran up the stairs, causing the tower to now experience tremors on a much harder scale. He finally saw the door, and slammed it open, not feeling the resistance from the men that were in front of it, and saw 4 women he was familiar with, but only one that he knew could have created that energy. With his grin still present, he said, "I knew that energy felt familiar." He watched as the 4 women launched themselves at him while exclaiming, "Naruto-sama," before they all landed on the ground, laughing, while holding each other, with Boa and Sandersonia on his right, and Marigold and Marguerite on his left, all of them feeling up Naruto's body and blushing at the muscles and firm abs they felt. The other women present all began blushing at how handsome Naruto looked, smiling, and how his laugh sounded so pleasant. Naruto, as well as everyone else, were then all greatly surprised when Hancock suddenly began kissing him, and they all saw Sandersonia and Marguerite grinding up on him, with Sandersonia taking his right arm, and Marguerite taking his left leg, both still blushing, with Marigold still rubbing his chest and abs. Naruto was shocked for a second before he got into the kiss and began returning it, while also adding tongue and dominating Hancock in the kiss. After a few minutes of kissing and grinding, the 5 of them stopped, with Hancock now having hearts for pupils, and got up from the ground, before Naruto, still holding Hancock by her waist, began, "Oh my Kami. Hancock. I haven't seen you since Marineford," Naruto exclaimed, snapping Hancock out of her daze. Then he turned to the other 3, "And you 3, I haven't seen you since I helped your island. How've you all been? And how's Amazon Lily been?" Sandersonia answered with a blush, "We've all been good, and so has Amazon Lily. We are surprised at how well you've managed to recuperate. From what we last heard from your fellow crewmates, you were covered in bandages, and were unconscious for 5 days before regaining consciousness, all after an explosion of energy that Wani-sama told us she witnessed happen that apparently all emerged from you." Everyone had different reactions to the past few minutes. The male shinobi all were envious of Naruto for having 4 beautiful women all in love and lusting after him, and were curious on what happened. The female shinobi were all envious of the women for being able to cling and kiss Naruto like they did, and then felt worry at hearing Naruto had been hurt. Minato, on the other hand, was filled with envy and fury, both on how the demon got these 4 women, and for the amount of power that they are saying all came from him. Naruto chuckled nervously while rubbing the back of his head. "Yeah, it was a crazy few days. The guys told me that after I finished my rampage on Marineford, they actually discovered Whitebeard's Gurgura no Mi and Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi among our fruits in the hold since I apparently killed Blackbeard, who was still on Marineford at the time. After I came to, me and the guys all started talking about what we were going to do with the fruits, before it was decided that I eat the Gurgura no Mi, and figure something out with the Yami Yami no Mi. After that, we began traveling back here to my country, and during the travel, I just slowly practiced with Pop's powers which, oddly enough, let me make some new moves." Naruto took on a thinking pose, before he shook his head. "Anyway, after that, we made it here, where I told them if they ever needed me to call me on my Den Den Mushi." Naruto pulled out a sleeping orange snail from his pocket. It had a red shell in the shape of a spiral, a mouth, and under that was the same mark Naruto had on his back. Naruto then continued, "And before they left, I gave Marco a bunch of envelopes that held letters and pieces of my Viva card that were to be sent to a bunch of my friends and many others, with you guys being some of them." Naruto finished, while putting the snail back in his pocket. Boa nodded her head and said, "We did receive your letters, which let all of Amazon Lily rest easy, as they had been worrying about their protector since all they heard last was that you were unconscious." Boa finished with her hands on her hips and leaning towards Naruto with a knowing look. Naruto chuckled nervously again and said, "Yeah, I kinda figured they would, but that is why I sent the letter as well, since I figured they would have been worried about me." Boa smiled and nodded her head. "Well, you were correct, since when they heard the news, all of Amazon Lily wanted to go to you to make sure you were okay, but the letter also calmed them down. So, everything turned out just fine." Naruto nodded his head. "That's good. I was afraid that everyone I knew would be worried, which is why I sent out so many letters, since I figured many people would be worried about me, and the pieces of my Viva card would also help calm them down." Boa and the others nodded, figuring that a piece of his Viva card would be the best way to calm many of his friends and allies down. Before they could continue their conversation, however, they heard a throat clearing and turned to see it was Minato, who was subtly glaring at Naruto. Naruto, thinking he was being rude, said, "Excuse me, fuckhead." This gained gasps of shock from the men, and stifled giggles from the women present. "We are talking here, and you are being really rude right now."